everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and we are just hours away from the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Los Angeles Chargers in Los Angeles. I'll be flying out tomorrow. That's why I'm still here in the studio, so pray for flights being on time. But everything else should be okay. The number of times I've gone to Los Angeles, the biggest challenge is usually, for me, not even traffic. It's finding my way in and out of that press box in LA, which is maybe the most confusing that there is because it's built deep down into the ground. So you leave on the top level, which I don't think there's any other stadium like that in the NFL. But that's a me problem, not a you problem. Big show coming out tonight around 7:30. We've got Sam Schwartzstein, who is a friend and is Thursday Night Football's analytics expert. It is a really good conversation. We talked a little earlier just about the analytics of this game, how we now have a lot of data insights into how these two teams are going to play each other, and we identify some key factors. And then later on this evening in the 8 o'clock hour, we will have Steven Haglund from the Guilty as Charged podcast. So very excited about that conversation as well. We go position by position matchups, but the one thing about it is who's going to be playing in some of them position by position matchups, because the injury report took me a little bit by surprise today when it came out. And keep in mind that the Vikings didn't really practice this week. When you have Thursday Night Football, you don't really have time to have a real, actual, full padded helmets on and pads popping type of practice to get ready for Thursday Night Football. So you have walkthroughs where they try to implement the game plan the best they can while allowing the players to do their mostly normal recovery and try to treat it like a normal week that way, but not straining everybody's body and still trying to get everything schematically ready to go for Thursday night. So estimating how much of practice somebody did is not the easiest thing to do for the coaching staff, but it was a surprise to see Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw show up as questionable on the injury report. Now, we know that Brian O'Neill, coming off of that MCL injury, has been fighting to get back early, because usually that takes a little bit longer than even what we would have expected. So him getting back against Philadelphia was a bit of a surprise even for me. I thought maybe he would come back Thursday night. Maybe he might not even be back until the game against the Detroit Lions. So he gets back there and plays an excellent game against the Philadelphia Eagles. But it's unlikely that O'Neill was at 130%, as Kevin O'Connell said the other day, and yet still put on a really strong performance. And then Christian Darrisaw, and this recovery from his ACL injury, has, I guess, drawn a lot of questions about the timeline and how much he's been able to do and whether he's back to 100%. And he did tell us, Kevin O'Connell did tell us, that he would be missing some practice just as a basic recovery tactic each week. But to be questionable and miss this practice today was not something that I would have expected. But I don't know if that's just because of the regular scheduled him missing some practice to just sit out as part of him coming back from the ACL injury, because if it is, well, then no big deal and he's going to play. But if something else came up with the ACL recovery, then it's maybe unclear if he's going to play, the entire game. You recall against the Cleveland Browns, Darrisaw came out late in that game, and O'Connell said it was because he was on a pitch count. There have been some, including our good friend Jeremiah Searles, who said, I don't know if it really sounds like that, or possibly Darrisaw was worn down or wasn't feeling at 100% and decided it was better if he didn't continue to play in that game. We're not really fully sure there, but still did not play that full game. And then against Philadelphia, he does play the full game. He's, again, absolutely terrific in that game. Both tackles were excellent at keeping Carson Wentz clean, and now they're both questionable going into this game. So there's a little bit of mystery when it comes to both of these tackle positions. Is this just routine rest and you have to put it down as questionable, or maybe you just put it down as questionable because you can, because he sat out some of the practice? And why not make the Chargers think about whether they're facing O'Neal and Darrisaw? But O'Neal didn't practice twice this week either leading up to this. So both are questionable for the game. And clearly, this is a massive, massive factor for the Minnesota Vikings, because those two playing last week, I could call this up the numbers wise, but they were really, really excellent. And this was as close as we've gotten outside of the center position to the Vikings having their full offensive line. Brian O'Neal allowed one quarterback pressure and graded 81.5 by PFF. Darrisaw 79 grade and allowed two pressures. So when you're facing the Eagles and you give up three total pressures to your quarterback throughout an entire game, that's what we've come to expect from O'Neal and Darrisaw. But that's a cheat code right there. And if they could have blocked a little bit better on the interior at the center position, they would have had the best game, I think, in a long time, because Will Fries played very well in that game. And Donovan Jackson gave up two pressures in his return, but he's still working his way back to 100%. So I would be surprised if either guy does not play, with the fact that they were playing against Philadelphia, but it is a short turnaround. And if neither one of them came out at even close to 100%, or they came out of that game really banged up and can't get fully healthy by the time that they step on the field for Thursday Night Football, then we are talking about this team going back to Justin Skol playing, or possibly even Walter Rouse. I would assume that it's going to be Justin Skol. And if for some reason neither of them can play, well, then it's a Walter Rouse and Justin Skol matchup. And this is not a team that is dominant as far as pass rush goes for the Chargers, but they are good enough with Khalil Mack continuing to come back that they can create some problems, at least if you're talking about playing with backup tackles. So the difference in the gap between those two playing and those two not playing is, as you've seen this year, absolutely enormous. And the Vikings really need this game. Really, really need this game. So I wrote about this yesterday over at purpleinsider.football, just how badly the Vikings need this one. Because if we do a little game of what if you win, what if you lose? If you win the game with Carson Wentz, you're going to feel like you got away with something. Because I did a little exercise and I looked at a bunch of quality backup guys we consider quality backups from last year. The Andy Daltons, the Jameis Winston, the guys that we consider to be like pretty average or above average QB2s. And they went something like 6-28 combined last year. Like, your win percentage when you are a backup quarterback, or as a team when you're playing a backup quarterback, I did this from a few years ago and added up 2 or 3 years. It's about 30% across the league. And if you can get away with winning 3 out of 5, and then McCarthy comes back and the team is getting healthier and you've got a mini bye week to prepare for the Detroit Lions, you're going to feel like this was a hard reset of the season, but it's very much still on, and off we go and survive all of the calamities that struck this franchise with injuries over the first 6-7 weeks of the season. And all right, well, it's not the best position anyone's ever been in at 4-3, but okay, like, you look around. A lot of teams have 4 wins, 5 wins. They're going to play each other, and you're right in the mix, and you've got a chance. But if they lose this game and go to 3-4, then you're talking about really feeling like you're falling way behind a lot of the other top NFC teams, the Packers, the Lions, but not just them. There's a lot of teams in the NFC West with the Rams and the Seahawks and the 49ers all playing good football. The NFC East, Washington is still not, it looks like, going to play Jaden Daniels, but the Giants aren't a joke, and Washington could get Daniels back and get going, and Dallas is pretty good, and Philadelphia clearly is playing extremely well. Like, it's a tough NFC, even though no one is special. There's a lot of good. You need to be right in that conversation coming out of this game. And if it just got harder for Carson Wentz with the injury report, that could be tough. Also, Andrew Van Ginkel is not going to play again. And this just becomes more and more concerning that he has returned to practice. He's only been limited in practice, has not been able to fully practice at really any point since he played a couple of snaps against the Cincinnati Bengals, racked up 2 sacks, and then hasn't played since. And you start to wonder, is there going to be a point this season where Van Ginkel will be 100%? And when we talk about the defense, which is going to lead me to the FanDuel question of the day, when we talk about the defense, I mean, one of the major factors is they just have not had their most dynamic player, a guy who was the highest awarded of a second team All-Pro all of last year in Andrew Van Ginkel. And it matters a lot. Like, there's been some discussion this week about Dallas Turner and how he's performed so far, which I think has been okay. It hasn't been special. I don't think it's been terrible. He's gotten a good number of quarterback pressures. He's got a couple of sacks. He's made some nice plays in the run game. He's also been washed out too much in the run game. And gosh, when you play Lane Johnson, you're talking about the gold standard of playing Lane Johnson. So I saw some people tweeting out some clips of, well, Dallas Turner really got taken out of this play. And like, that's the greatest, man. Like, that's like you are fighting up against Mike Tyson there. Like, that's the best of the best. So that was a tough matchup for him. But also, I think about how this wasn't supposed to be his role. His role was supposed to be 3 outside linebackers on the field at a lot of times with Andrew Van Ginkel and playing a lot of different mind games with opposing teams' offenses that they just haven't been able to do. So he's had to go from, here's how you practiced all summer, this was how you practiced, to, hey, actually, can you do that other guy's job? I mean, that's a bit on the tough side. And I know that every time his name comes up, that it just turns into, he's a bust and he wasn't worth it and all that sort of stuff. And I get that, but like, let's move on from that part of it and just talk about him as a part of this defense. Is getting him to his full level of effectiveness is harder to do when you don't have Andrew Van Ginkel, and the threat of short passes turn into pick sixes is gone. And where's that guy rushing from? Well, you can't really do that when you don't have any backup outside linebackers. And last year, and what was supposed to happen this year, is a lot of, hey, where'd that guy come from? And, they had Pat Jones last year, and they had Jihad Ward last year. They had these other outside linebackers who were coming in the game, and Dallas Turner, to where, hey, why is Andrew Van Ginkel on this side? Or why is he rushing from the middle? Or they did a lot of that, a lot of stunts and different looks that they just haven't been able to do. So that will be a factor. Also, Joe Alt is questionable for the Chargers. If he plays, that will be even tougher for the Vikings to get pressure. But I think that's really the main story here for the defense is, can you cause Justin Herbert to turn the ball over, to get sacks, to do things that we just have not seen this Vikings defense do, which leads me to the FanDuel question of the day. So that is, Justin Herbert's over-under for this game on FanDuel is 255.5 yards. From what you've seen of the Vikings defense, what's your trust level that they can hold him underneath that number? So give me a 1 to 10 trust level, or however you want to frame it. But 255.5, will the Vikings keep Justin Herbert under that number? And how confident are you that they can do it? My confidence would only be about a 4, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing if he throws for more than 255 if the Chargers are playing from behind. That's what the Vikings need. They need a game, just one game, to look like the Vikings from last year on defense. The only game where they've really looked that way is against Cincinnati and at times against Chicago, where they chased around Caleb Williams and Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, added up to 11 pressures, which is the most that I could find going back a ways on PFF for 2 defensive tackles for the Vikings. But they just haven't had those opportunities since. When you go through the games, Bijan Robinson ran all day long, and then the Bengals game, they just took the ball away from them and scored touchdowns and so forth. But since then, Pittsburgh got to run all day and throw short passes. We saw Cleveland do the same thing. They ran Quinshon Judkins constantly. And then even against the Eagles, where they were up and they took shots and they hit big shots down the field, but they didn't throw a lot of passes. I mean, if you only drop back to throw 26 times, it's hard to get a ton of pressures, a ton of sacks, and to get in the quarterback's head. But if Herbert has to throw all day, if they could slow down the LA run game, which, I think some confidence from that from last week against Saquon Barkley. But if they could do that and force Herbert to play from behind, if they could score early, then you might be talking about seeing Jonathan Grenard get his sack total up. Dallas Turner have a bigger game pressure-wise. And it should be no surprise that Turner's best game was against Cincinnati. They're playing from behind. They're throwing all the time. Those things are factors. So if Herbert throws for over 255, it doesn't mean the Vikings lost. That might mean that they were playing from ahead. But your confidence level that they can face off with a team with a great quarterback, with really excellent weapons, and a struggling offensive line against this defense. So I've got time for questions, comments, thoughts going into this game. But now we just added a new game time, big storyline with the injury report today and both tackles being on it. There was some good news, which is Donovan Jackson came out of that game. Must have been fine because he was a full participant. And it sounded like Aaron Jones is likely to play in this game. From the way that Kevin O'Connell talked about it, he kind of talked around it a little bit. Like, we don't really need a big ramp up from the 21-day window, but how much Aaron Jones is going to play would be hard to say. I don't think you want to put a big workload on him, yet at the same time, you want him out there. Xavier Scott is questionable. You've only got Cam Akers otherwise, and then Jordan Mason. And this is a game where they're going to want to run the ball. We continue to pound that drum. We continue to talk about, hey, you need to run. Last week, I understood why they didn't, because they were having success on a down-to-down basis with throwing the football against the Eagles. But against the team that just got run out of their building by Indianapolis, I think you do want to run. That could depend, though, of course, on what they have health-wise at the tackle position. And we also don't know whether it is going to be Blake Brandel or Michael Juergens at center. I think that you would prefer that they just stick with the veteran and say, look, that was Jalen Carter. He is the best player in the league at defensive tackle. The reason the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl is truly shocking. It's that they've got a bunch of freaking amazing players. And Jalen Carter is up at the top of that list. I mean, he's right there. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Carter. These guys are elite players in the league. And when you're playing a backup center versus an elite defensive tackle, that is the way it often goes. So I don't think that the Chargers have that caliber or anything even close, anything even in the stratosphere of Jalen Carter. So they should stick with Blake Brandel, I think. But, maybe what they saw last week made them a little frustrated. I don't know. I mean, Juergens, I think, is better when it comes to like the run blocking and getting outside zone and reach blocking against three techniques and things like that. So that may turn into a factor. Also, the snap that went back to center field also has to be concerning as well, because Brandel had snapped the ball well, but even one mistake that's that bad that costs you 20 yards has to be worrisome. Not that Juergens was perfect with that either. So there's a lot of factors going into this game. Pizza Guy says, what a bummer about that report. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I was surprised to see it, but when you don't have any real practice, it's hard to say like how serious is that they're questionable, or is it just that why would you practice Brian O'Neill coming off of his injury? And it could be also typical rest for Christian Darrisaw. So I don't want to sound the alarms like, hey, this is, they're going to miss the game and this is a big problem. That was me sounding an alarm. I don't know whatever. So anyway, but it's with a short week like this, it's just really hard to get a read on it. But the fact that they're on there, even opening the door for the possibility of Justin Skol being back in there is significant, because the drop-off and the concern that you would have especially is that both of these players are coming off injuries. So what you want to see is them come out of the Philadelphia game, practice the entire week, and be good to go on a Thursday. But it makes you wonder about their long-term health for the entire season of, like, can they get Brian O'Neill back to 100%? Can they get Christian Darrisaw up to full health? Because the way he played against Philadelphia, there was a rep or two where he got beat, where he didn't look like the typical Christian Darrisaw, but we've just come to expect perfection from him all the time. But overall, it was stellar. And the run game, especially to the left side behind Christian Darrisaw, or, I mean, look, you can go to the outside either way. I don't think Fries has been quite as dominant in the run game as I expected. Another guy that's coming off of an injury last year. He's actually been good in the pass protection, but maybe not quite pushing people around or as explosive as he was last year early with Indianapolis. Maybe that will come back as the season continues to carry on. But are you going to get 100% Darrisaw, 100% Brian O'Neill, or anywhere close? And with Darrisaw especially, I mean, again, leave the door open for maybe it's just the routine rest that they always plan for him, but it was only a walkthrough. So what would you be? I don't know. Like, this is a hard one. We don't deal with this too often with the Thursday night games, but with the Darrisaw injury and recovery, it has been a little bit murky the entire time, where it seemed like maybe it was even possible for week 1 or 2. And then Darrisaw comes out after playing week 3 and says, yeah, guys, I wasn't even supposed to be back till like after London. And so we're all like, you weren't? What? Huh? Okay, that's interesting. And that, because that never came up before, but all right. And then the pitch count thing, and it's just been a little bit mysterious of, is he really back up to full strength where he's going to play game after game after game? Or could this be another situation where on the short week, he wants to play it safer or didn't come out of the game feeling as good? So all of these things are things to watch when we get into this game against the Chargers. Zoomer KO, CD is arguably the most important offensive player. I mean, I don't disagree with you there. I mean, we've seen that when he's not in. Even with someone like Justin Jefferson, when you have Jordan Addison, you still feel like you have a wide receiver 1 in the game. But when you go from the top 5 tackle in the game to a replacement level backup who gets beat fast a lot, that's such an enormous difference. And Carson Wentz under pressure has made a lot of big mistakes so far. It's not something you want to see, because that's how you get pick sixes. That's how you have, interceptions against the Pittsburgh Steelers, is just when the pressure starts to ramp up, and he will take sacks and he will try to scramble and get strip sacked. That's really who Carson Wentz is. And if you have his blind side completely taken care of and you feel like you're good, not that facing off with Khalil Mack ever makes you feel like you're good, but at least you have a chance there, and Mack's not what he was in 2018 or something against the Bears. You still feel pretty darn good about it. But not if Justin Skol is in there. The difference is enormous. I don't disagree at all. Let's see. Yeah, Res Runner, he did get injured last year in the Thursday night game, right? I don't know if that would, make you think at all about that. But that was really a random injury, so I don't know. Jackie says, Herbert is the ultimate prototype quarterback, size, athleticism, absolute KOC fit, who would be an MVP caliber quarterback with KOC in our weapons. Confidence level is also a 4 that the Vikings will keep him under 255. He's an excellent player. And I agree with you that if you could give him Jefferson and Addison and push the ball down the field, I think that Herbert lives in a very interesting space of the same exact tier or bubble of someone like Dak Prescott, where when the Vikings play Dak Prescott or Jared Goff, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, hey, this quarterback's really good. And you've just seen way too many huge games from them over the years. But that doesn't mean that they're perfect, or that you just cannot beat them. Like, there's no way, there's no kryptonite at all. They all fall under that same tier of, I used to talk about this when I was trying to kind of frame what Kirk Cousins was in the NFL, like where he existed among quarterbacks. And the thing that I landed on was that if you have Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, I'll even toss Josh Allen into this, you're going to have, or Lamar Jackson or Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, you're going to have 10 shots over a career, if not more, of winning a Super Bowl. Now, that doesn't mean they'll win more than one. Aaron Rodgers only won one, but if you go through his seasons, there were 10 different chances for him to win the Super Bowl. If you have a guy like Matt Ryan, for example, or Eli Manning, you might get one or two chances where your team is that good and the guy is hot, playing well, and the weapons are around him and the coaching is good. You get one or two shots. And Ryan didn't win his, Eli won his, Phillip Rivers didn't win his. Like, there's a lot of those types of quarterbacks through NFL history. Matthew Stafford is that type of quarterback where you get one or two shots to really win a Super Bowl, and you better do it that year, and Stafford did. And then there's like the level down where you think it's going to take kind of a miracle. And I always sort of put Kirk in that category where he's very, very good, but it's going to kind of take a little bit of a miracle. When I think of Justin Herbert, I think of him in that Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford type of tier of he'll probably get one or two chances to win a Super Bowl. He's that talented. He's that good. But year in and year out, it's not going to be like Aaron Rodgers in his prime. It's not going to be like Tom Brady or something where every single year, no matter what's going on around him, he's got a chance to win the Super Bowl. And earlier this season, it looked like Justin Herbert was going to have a great chance this year. It looked like this was going to be one of those years. And it turns out that with all the injuries they faced, they look like just another team in the league. And he looks destined. And this is why I've made the Kirk Burt joke before about Justin Herbert, who I do believe, and we all know, we all know it's a bit. We all know that Herbert is more physically gifted, but his team has never been good enough, and he hasn't been able to drag them over the finish line like some of the great quarterbacks do. This feels like another one of those years that he's going to hover around 500. And that's why he's more Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning-ish to me, because if you look at their careers, when their teams were great, they were great, and they could win 12 games and they could have a chance to win the Super Bowl. But Phillip Rivers had a lot of years where his team was around 500 because he was great, but he wasn't perfect. He had imperfections that you could take advantage of. And I think that you're going to see that from the Vikings trying to do that against him, which to me, they didn't do very well last time, just blitzing him. I think making him stand in the pocket as long as they can to sort through the defense might be the way. I don't know. When you have a guy that big, I was reminded that there was a report that the Vikings did call Jim Harbaugh just in case, and then the Chargers just in case, like, hey, I don't think you're trading him, but can you just tell us for sure when Harbaugh took over that you guys don't want to trade us Herbert and draft JJ McCarthy? So we know the respect that the Vikings have for this team. Pizza guy Darrisaw, scene of the crime, maybe a little hesitant. I don't think that's it, but it has been a big thing about his recovery and him not, I think, wanting to play if it's not 100%, which is smart because you've got a long career in front of you. And if you're not feeling right, then you shouldn't just keep fighting through it, because I would rather have Darrisaw. And again, the official statement from Kevin O'Connell was that he was on a pitch count. Why you would set up a pitch count to take him out of the game in the biggest moments doesn't quite make sense typically how you do that. But if Darrisaw did take himself out of the game, you would rather have him do that than re-injure his knee and then be without Christian Darrisaw. You'd rather have him miss this game, as terrible as that would be, or not play the entire game, than you would have him be out for the rest of the season. And we know that that's been the Vikings' philosophy. Fanny says 2 out of 10. They have Keenan Allen. He's a Vikings killer. He certainly is. And he's beaten Byron Murphy like 70% last year when he played for Chicago. Great route runner. Underneath, especially in short area, just understands defenses so well. Brilliant player. I'm a very big fan of Keenan Allen's game. And it's one of those guys that everybody says he's underrated, like he's not, but yeah, I think that he doesn't get the same sort of shine as a lot of other guys. Will says Walter Rouse over Justin Skol. That may be true. And personally, from the snaps that they've both taken this year, I'd rather have Walter Rouse in there. He's more physically talented. Really, when Rouse was coming out, everybody knew he was a top pass blocker. I think that there was maybe some concern that he could be a run blocker, and he's not the level of athlete that somebody like Christian Darrisaw is, but his pass blocking was his forte. He's a former basketball player. He's got, I think some really good feet that helps him out. I would rather see him as well. But I don't know, like, would they go with the experience on a Thursday night? That might be the case. Fake something says Mason rolled up on his repaired knee on a play in the Browns game. Seems no one else noticed in the game, but scared the hell out of me when it happened. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that does kind of happen a lot where people fall on someone. And maybe you're right. Maybe that play was what caused him to want to go out of the game, that somebody fell on his knee and he was concerned that there's something could be wrong. But I think just even in general, overall, like, they have been very cautious with this, and he's been cautious with it. And he said that he pushed it to get out there and he's wearing the brace and everything. I don't think he wants to be wearing the brace. It's hard. Sometimes with these ACLs, you just go, hey, it's just an ACL. He'll be back. And every single time, like, it's not that easy. Just because Dalvin Cook came back well, but, Cook got hurt too. Just because Adrian Peterson did it, it doesn't mean that everybody's ACL recovery, especially a guy that big, is going to be exactly the same. Will says, imagine the conversation 2 weeks from now. If we win this game, then JJ goes into Detroit and gets the win. Right. No, great point, Will. And that's why when after the Philly loss, and I know that this is football, and I know that every loss is pitchforks and torches and burn it all down and fire every person and everything. I understand, like, that's, people invest so much heart and soul into this team when they disappoint you and make huge mistakes in a game that, like, that's the reaction. But these seasons can turn so fast. And I learned that after I massively overreacted to a loss that the Vikings had against Detroit in 2017, where Dalvin Cook tore his ACL in that game and they lost, I think, 14-7. Case Keenum played really badly and may have gotten picked off or fumbled on the last drive. And it was just really ugly. And it came out of it saying, oh man, do they need to trade for a quarterback? Like, this thing looks like it's over. This season is toast. I told my program director at the time at 1500 ESPN, like, I don't think we should spend the budget to travel. We should spend it on, owners meetings and, combine and stuff like that. Cause this team is cooked. And instead they win 13 games. So you're absolutely right that you win this one and it could take you down a different path very much if JJ McCarthy can come back and the offense can start looking the way it's supposed to look. And in terms of that level of optimistic viewpoint, if they get a win, JJ McCarthy would be throwing his first ever pass in a real game to the guy that he played the best with in training camp, which is Jordan Addison. And he would be blocked for, assuming that all is good with the health, for the first time from Christian Darrisaw. And those things do matter. Detroit's defense has impressed me this year with Kelvin Shepard. I thought early on I was a little worried about Kelvin Shepard. Saw, a press conference where he was kind of really intense. I was like, I don't know, man. But he has, I think, enhanced that defense so it's better schematically, but they're still missing a lot of players. So they're not perfect either. And I think there is that opportunity to start being what you thought you were going to be. There may be a little bit in terms of getting too far behind at 4-3 to win the division. I would say that, especially with Chicago playing well. But you could be in the discussion for a wild card if you could come out of this at 4-3. If it's 3-4, then I have a much more difficult time believing that they'll be able to make up that ground with JJ McCarthy still learning how to play quarterback. Jarrett says 2 teams with brutal injury luck so far. Huge game for both. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the loser comes out of this game feeling really horrible about themselves. And the winner feels like we survived for sure. But yeah, it has been such a really tough schedule, really, really tough schedule. Just for overall for the Vikings, having the overseas games and then a Thursday night right after that. I mean, it has caused, I think, a lot of challenges when it comes to the injuries and the recovery. And we even see that when it comes to JJ McCarthy, that if they had just had a bunch of noon games on Sunday at US Bank Stadium or in, Green Bay or Chicago, as opposed to going all over the world here, then, I think that it would have been a lot easier for JJ McCarthy to get back to 100%. So, reminder that FanDuel question of the day, Justin Herbert's over under 255.5 yards. From what you've seen from the Vikings defense, what is your trust level that they can hold him underneath that number? A lot of you have been at 2, 4. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of belief there. And I think that that's understandable considering the secondary has been spotty at best when we're talking about them playing against good quarterbacks so far. Still a small sample size. The one thing I think, though, is that the yards aren't so important. It's sacks, interceptions, fumbles. If you can get 5 of those things, either a sack, a fumble, or an interception from Justin Herbert, then the Vikings defense can help them win this game. If you get less than that, if you don't get sacks, if you don't get interceptions, if you don't get fumbles, at least a couple. I'm not saying all of them, not saying 5 of each, but 4 or 5 total. Can you get 3 sacks and 2 fumbles, or a fumble and a pick? If you can rattle him with, he's a big guy. He'll take the hits. He'll stand in there. But if you can cause him to make those mistakes, then you've got a chance, regardless of how many yards he throws for. But it's also an interesting over-under number, so we bring it up. All right, I got a very special guest for you. I think one of the smartest football minds in the entire universe, a friend of mine, Sam Schwartzstein. The Amazon broadcast, Thursday Night Football, begins 6 o'clock Central, and Prime Vision begins when they kick off. So I was lucky enough to be joined by Sam Schwartzstein to give an analytical preview of this game. We also talk about how teams are using analytics, and he is also the inventor of this here kickoff that the National Football League has been using. So a great conversation here with Sam Schwartzstein, and we'll fire it up. This is a good one. Here we go. All right, now we welcome in a very special guest. First time ever on the show, but not the first time ever we have talked. Sam Schwartzstein, who is Thursday Night Football's analytics expert and a wizard behind Prime Vision, which, of course, for analytics nerds like myself, is just candy every single week. So I want to get into that, but also a man who used to snap footballs to Andrew Luck and play for one Jim Harbaugh. Thursday Night Football, Jim Harbaugh's on TV. You're involved with this broadcast, Sam Schwartzstein. This must be pretty cool, my man, for you to be seeing the former coach and you're involved with this. Maybe you'd rather be snapping footballs, but this isn't too bad, eh?
Hey, much less painful doing the broadcast from Amazon Studios in Culver City. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, this is always fun for me, Harbaugh Week. It's always fun. I get to reconnect with Coach. He's still part, messages me and my wife every year, birthdays and things. And so it's very fun to get to interact with him. And also, offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who I'm close with, he was our offensive coordinator for multiple years at Stanford. And then just covering their games is very fun because it's all very similar play calls and mentality. I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of hound 2, kill 2 jet getting ready for this blitz expectations here. So it's very fun for me in those weeks. All these weeks are fun with Prime Vision. I think what's cool about for the people who have seen the show, it's different every single week. And our coordinating producer, Alex Strand, producer Scott Carpin, Jeff Butler, our director, everyone puts so much time and effort to make sure that we can have a unique show each week, and it's been very fun.
So I want to dive into how that all works, but let's talk a little bit of Vikings and Chargers here. One of the things that you're doing is using next-gen stats to provide insights to the game, which it's just been so interesting how we went from, 5-6 years ago, the first time you and I ever talked, where we were with numbers. We had our DVOAs, we had our PFF stuff, and everybody in the league was talking about, what do we do with this tracking data? And now I think we're able to shine so much more light on how football works. Apply that in your preparation to a game like this, where you have a team that's struggling with some offensive line injuries, a team with a backup quarterback. Like, how are you in your preparation using that next gen data to preview and then analyze this game in real time?
Yeah, I think for us, we never want people to feel like they're watching a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But we'll use analytics to give you a guided viewing experience, right? So something that we know about Carson Wentz is he loves to target out routes in the red zone. So in the red zone, we're gonna see them condense those formations and then go out. And what's great is the teams have same access to this data. So you'll see is Jesse Minter going to play more outside leverage. Also, the Chargers, one of the highest zone defenses in the NFL, running zone coverage. But when they get to the red zone, they go to man 40% of the time, one of the highest rates of man. And so are they going to continue to do that because you have two number one wide receivers? I think what people get caught up a lot of in traditional yards world is yards, accumulating yards, it can be high usage, which is what we see from Justin Herbert. He has 40 more dropbacks than the next player in the league right now. So like his yards are not as effective. But as someone who's a very big Justin Herbert person, loves him, his interceptions, he's doubled from last year already. 6 interceptions versus 3. We can actually measure that in EPA. And I think when people get caught up in this expected points metric, I think probably the easiest thing, as I've changed how I explain it to people every single year, is what if you could count interception yards as negative yards for quarterbacks? And what if we could say a interception in certain parts of the field is more detrimental than other parts of the field? And that's what EPA is doing. Mm-hmm. And so you look at his EPA numbers, he isn't playing at the MVP level that his passing yards might tell you he's doing. So I think it's going to be an awesome matchup. Really looking forward to see how Justin Jefferson is going to be included into this game, because he is not at the same height that he should be. And I'm waiting for Carson Wentz to kind of figure out he doesn't need to be the same level of open as any other player. So if you do see man coverage, which Carson Wentz's time to throw versus zone is super low versus it's super high against man, let's get him the ball. Like, just throw him the football and we'll see what happens. And that's the next step Wentz needs to take, to be like, hey, every Kevin O'Connell reclamation project that takes its time.
You know, it's so interesting because we can really paint a much more detailed picture of how these things actually work. And what we've talked about a lot is that time to throw metric, I think, has been a real game changer for understanding sacks, but also understanding how teams want to play, pair that with average depth of target. And somebody like Justin Jefferson has always been such a great target down the field for all of his quarterbacks. And last year, Sam Darnold, I believe, held the ball longer than anybody else in the NFL. They don't want Carson Wentz to do that, even though most of the offensive line has come back and the Chargers are not a super dangerous pass rushing team, but they do mix up a lot of coverages. And I wonder, like, that the coverage data is so interesting, like what that tells you about how defenses play, because I think with Carson Wentz, what we've seen is if he can get it to that first read real quick, like you're talking about against zone coverage, it's been working and it's been on time. I think it is when the coverage, it doesn't present itself right away, that you see a little more of Carson Wentz saying, is that what I'm really seeing? And then when there's that ever so slight delay, that's where problems crop up. But I'd love to hear you talk more about how that coverage data works.
It's awesome. And Next Gen Stats provides all of that to us. But then in game, you'll get it on high leverage downs. And you might get it more often this week too, because of the unique coverages that both teams will play. Both teams are going to bring non-traditional rushers, pass rushers. So we used to say off-ball pass rushers. Watching film this week, the Vikings will walk everyone up at the line of scrimmage. And so it might sound weird to people, but non-traditional pass rushers, you're going to see. So you're going to see a lot of defensive alert, red orbs indicating the player likely to blitz. But then with coverage, it's so interesting because if a quarterback can get a pre-snap read, and this happens a lot for Wentz in the red zone, is he's going to look to one side of the field. He's going to look for the hook defender, and he's going to say, if he takes the slant, I'm going to throw it to the flat. If he takes the flat, I'm going to throw it. And he makes that really quick decision. On our show, we're going to be able to show you that coverage prediction before the snap. And so it's going to be up to you and Carson Wentz to kind of see, is he going to make that read? And if you see man show up in that red zone prediction, know that that's going to be the harder play for Wentz. And that's going to be a fun little element layered that I wasn't super keen on it this week on that side of the ball because of so much zone, but it really is a coin flip for the Chargers in that red zone. And then the same for the Vikings. The Vikings, they're going to run the most crazy stuff, as people who make models. Vikings week is always a hard one, because they're gonna do the trickiest stuff, the most unique things, and it's so fascinating now to be able to take all the different coverage. And Next Gen Stats released coverage responsibilities, and so we know that Isaiah Rodgers plays the deep half of the field the most of any other corner. It's about 9% of the time. That might not seem like a lot, but hey, anytime you can trap a coverage, so we call that two invert. When the corners play the deep half and then you have the safeties play the flat defender, that's actually really important to know that this team will put that player in that deep half. Normally, a quarterback can read cover two, but not all cover twos are created equal. And we've seen that now from these coverage models.
So I wonder how you apply that with specific things like injuries. And when you look at the Los Angeles Chargers, I mean, my thought on this week is the Vikings might not blitz as much as you think. Now, look, if they complete 2 passes with no blitz, Brian Flores is going to be like, give me that blitz button. That's what he did last week against Philly. They make one big play with time in the pocket. Give me that blitz. But at the same time, the 4-man rush has been able to get home against the Chargers, and Justin Herbert is taking an inordinate number of hits. So does that mean Aronde Gadsden is all of a sudden a guy underneath, and Lad McConkey and Keenan Allen, who has killed the Vikings? Like, are these underneath receivers? Like, how do we kind of factor for those things combined with what we know about how much Brian Flores loves to blitz?
Well, it's funny you said that. My Keegan Abdu at Next Gen Stats sent me this note late last night. The last time Brian Flores in 2023 played Justin Herbert, he blitzed on 82% of the snaps, one of the highest in the next gen era. And that was the fastest Justin Herbert was able to get rid of the football. And so Justin Herbert, a lot of the highlights we see are him scrambling around and throwing an arm, and that's why he gets the social media quarterback label, because some of the stuff he does is otherworldly. It's why people like me have him ranked so highly. But he is able to process at a high level. And so he's able to process. So I will be fascinated to see what the answers are going to be. Like you're saying, you can get home with 4 if you're going up against the 7th tackle for the Chargers, right? If they end up going down again to Foster Sorrell, Stanford legend, at tackle, like that could be something, an issue for them. So I will never predict what Brian Flores will do, because that's how you get in trouble.
Yeah, right.
is he's going to have a game plan, and like you said, it could flip on a dime. I think most importantly is with Andrew Van Ginkel out, how do they replace his kind of leadership up front there, and how is that going? Because he was a guy who I had as an All-Pro last year. Because and I'm partial. If you are a guy that is a tweener and you mess with traditional football, that makes me think you're amazing, right? Scott Matlock on the other side of the field, listed as a fullback, is an offensive lineman that just plays in the backfield. Similar type of guy, but not to the level Andrew Van Ginkel is. So those kinds of things, how do we make up for some of our stalwart players in the offense or in the defense? That's what I'm looking forward to.
And it's really hurt them too, to not have the dynamic pieces really all year, with Harrison Smith just playing 50 snaps for the first time. And that caused them to kind of reshuffle, but not everyone can do that. Then Josh Metellus was having to play more traditional safety. So Metellus up in the box, I think, changes a lot of things, especially with a Chargers team that wants to run, but they were so much better with him on the field against Philadelphia. He had a bunch of key stops. That's really his strength, is playing up in the box. So having at least Harrison Smith back, I think, helps you with the pre-snap deception. But that game you mentioned, I mean, Justin Herbert was incredible. He went 40 for 47. He ripped them apart. He is the type of quarterback who can just sit in there and have 21 play drives like they did last week. I think it's really a battle of two different philosophies with that, because the Chargers want to stay on the field. Harbaugh wants to stay on the field forever. Whereas the Vikings, despite playing 2 different quarterbacks, one young kid, one journeyman backup, are 6th in explosive plays this year, which I don't think anybody would have been able to guess based on who's playing quarterback. So it seems like the Chargers are going to want to complete these short passes, hold on to the ball forever, whereas the Vikings should look at their defense and say, it's been pretty porous the last few weeks. Can we hit play action shots downfield?
Absolutely. You have the perfect read on it. And I think what will be interesting is on the short week, will Carson Wentz be more of the Kevin O'Connell type of quarterback, or will they stay playing his game? Because they're missing some of that under center play action with him at quarterback. And I am all for playing to your quarterback strength and your player strengths. You'll see me on social media saying it's not the coordinator's job, it's the quarterback's job to score points. But I'll say that they were so good in rhythm last year, between 2.5 and 4 seconds. So that's getting the ball out at the right breaks that let you have even more explosive plays. And I think that's what they're going to want to get to against this defense, that with Khalil Mack coming back, that should help the pass rusher of the Chargers, but it's still not what expected. What is interesting is the sim pressures that defensive coordinator Jesse Minter brings creates a lot of unblocked pressures, unblocked blitzers. And so it'll be this offensive line, which is coming into its own. I think it's is Ryan Kelly going to play? I'm just trying to make sure.
No, he's not. It's going to be, it's either Blake Brandel or Michael Jurgens.
Right. So they'll have most of this offensive line they wanted to retool coming in this game. So it'll be close to what they imagined coming into the season. But, there are going to be some really big communication issues. And with Ryan Kelly out again, that's going to be a big one. Knowing who is actually going to be that fourth blitzer, because not every time does 4 down linemen come with this dude. They're not going to bring 5 and 6 and 7 a lot, but that fourth may not be the traditional rusher you think it's going to be.
Yeah, we only got 2 games of watching Ryan Kelly pick apart stunts, twists, blitzes, and it was mind-blowing to watch back on tape. And like, how does this guy do it? It's just not the same. Like, there's a reason that he is a Pro Bowler, and when you look at the pick 6, that's what got them. It was a simulated pressure, and he didn't identify Jalix Hunt dropping back, pressure up the middle, panic. And I'm sure that the Chargers caught that play on tape and saw that Carson Wentz, when he gets pressured, will panic and just throw the ball or try to make a play that he can't really actually make at his age and with the number of injuries. And I think that's going to be a major thing for the Chargers to try to cause him to make plays out of structure. I want to talk about identifying these blitzes with the orbs, because you love the orbs. I love the orbs. And it actually allows you to sort of play quarterback at home. And I think what it directs my eyes to when I'm watching Prime Vision is, hey, how are they going to block this? Like, so you're lighting up who is the most likely to blitz, who's going to be in the backfield. Are they going to go out? And you're kind of directing your eyes away from just quarterback with football. How does that work though? Like, how, because the orbs are right so much. I'm like, the orb, it did it again. How does that happen?
And what'll be super interesting this week is when we don't light everyone up that's all walked up, because the double mug look, which is 2 middle linebackers inside the A gaps, is something Brian Flores loves to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll play cover 2 out of it. You could have Harrison Smith walk up as an edge rusher and play the deep half on a play. But we won't light those players up. So even the players we don't light up, sometimes I'm going, what are we? This is clearly cover 0, and it's not. What we're doing is we're analyzing thousands of plays and then in real time sending those signals. We process it super, super fast. And our team in Israel that works on these models, that makes sure we have the fine-tuned stuff. And I think something I love about what we do at Amazon is we're never satisfied. So every year we're getting better, adding more into the system to make the system smarter. And so what you would have seen year 1 is we would have highlighted everyone walked up on the line of scrimmage. And now we're getting better at identifying who are those true players that you need to identify. And it's fun because now we have even more tools to where I can review plays of going in. So now I have a good idea of which players will light up, who's going to light up, when they're going to light up for the Chargers, because they run some of the complicated. It's the flip. Everyone shows for the Vikings, no one shows for the Chargers, and how do you spot those players? And so it's definitely going to be a fun one this week. It's definitely the cross my fingers, make sure everything works.
Well, also maybe gives you a window on how hard it is to identify those things, even if you're trained. I am curious, and I'm sure a lot of our audiences too, where teams are at with this in the NFL, because we've seen this mass hiring of analytics people coming a lot from the Big Data Bowl, where they use next-gen stats to study all sorts of different subjects. And as the internet debates whether PFF grades matter or not, which is maybe a 10-year-old conversation, I have the coaches and teams that I've talked to about this. I mean, they're using every single minute of every day with data paired with the film to learn about what coverages they might face, what rushes they might face, and how to teach their players better to identify these things. It's a part of every single game plan for every single team these days.
Yeah, and I'll go back to a quote I had from my professor in college, Jeremy Bailenson, when I was studying this stuff. He said, best versions of AI is when it's helping us ask questions, not answering questions. And that's what a lot of this has done so far, where teams will watch our broadcast, and now with defensive alerts on main broadcast every week, they're seeing it and they're learning from it. And a lot of the teams that have reached out to us have asked, how can we use this to help teach us football, right? And these are people who know football better than everybody, asking, how can I use this to teach them? And I think it's not that it knows more; it's just it can process more, it's seen more than what the coaches have, or it's not as reliant on priors. Right. A very simple thing is What's everyone say? Oh, here's the man coverage indicator. If a player goes in motion and the
Mhm.
defense follows in motion, it's always man. Well, that's not the case. Matt Eberflus started doing that years ago, where we're going to run motion and we'll have a zone coverage check on top of it, and the models can figure that stuff out. I can't give you an exactly why every single time. That's kind of
Yeah.
the beauty of AI, but it can help you learn where them key indicators might be for how we can process some of this information, or how do teams handle motion and break down the data. And I think teams are catching up to us. I work on NASCAR as well, and the NASCAR teams are much further ahead using analytics than the football teams are, but the teams are getting there. I think the demystification of analytics has been helped by the proliferation of the words AI. They're in the same family, but AI lets you interact with the data a little bit differently,
Mhm.
to where it's more of a companion versus what's this random number that you're telling me. So I think it's helpful now that AI is kind of making it more digestible for teams.
And I think always and forever, the best coaches are always going to say, what's the next thing that can help me stay ahead of everybody else? In my book, I write about the New York Giants. They're just adopting PFF, and people are shocked. Like, wait, Tom Coughlin? I thought he was an old school coach who wanted to win and wanted to get an edge in any way possible. So it feels like it's not just a schematic race. It's not just a front office race. It's also an AI and analytics race as well in the NFL, which has made it so much more interesting. The last thing I want to ask you, Sam, is the first time we ever talked was when I was doing an article begging the National Football League to adopt the XFL kickoff. And I thought they will never care about me or you and how much we want this play back, all the great kick returners of the past, but we've arrived and it's ruined football. No, I'm just kidding. But it has changed. It has changed football significantly, going from 2-3 years ago where man, I think the Vikings had like 10 returns the whole season, to now you got to be returning that ball. And it's been fascinating to watch the impact of that for big returns, big mistakes on returns, and then just the fact that teams are starting with better field position now. I would love to hear what you think of, as the person behind the XFL kickoff, how you've seen it implemented to the NFL and change the game.
Yes, I think the field position isn't that much big of a difference.
Hmm.
It's about 1 yard from last year, from the 28 to the 29 now, and then it's like 5 yards from the years before. So it's not as big of a difference on field position as people might have expected. I know that was my fear when I first started it. Was, oh my goodness, what if this is a touchdown every time, or what if this? And it's really very similar, and that's because the play is starting where all those coverage and return guys are where they normally would be when the ball was caught.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just starting the play instead of sprinting 35 yards to get there. You're starting there, and so that's why it's a very similar play. I think what's most important is we've had games decided on it. Monday Night Football, Vikings choosing to return to get to the 2-minute warning. It is always going to have now an impact on the game, and if you can be one of the teams that can gain 10, 20 yards, you talk about expected points, your starting field position is massive. So if you can gain the 10 extra yards, be a team that can return to the plus or to the 40, and be one of the teams that can limit returns. So the line drive kicks where you tend to hit the ball, hit the ground to start the play early.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a huge, massive advantage if you can do those consistently. And we've also seen when teams fail to do that, that can win games for their opponent. And so I think what's happened now is the big impetus the NFL wanted is keep the play, make the play safe, then the traditional kickoff, and also let's make sure we have plays. So many people are saying let's get rid of the kickoff, or no, it's a 100-yard play. It's exciting. We had untimed downs last year where we would just kick it. It was ceremonial. We'd watch the kick. But now you're having a lot more excitement into the game because there's variability. If everyone just started on the 25, it's uninteresting. Now we don't know where, after every touchdown, we don't know where the team's going to start. That's exciting.
No, I totally agree with you. And it allows players like Miles Price, undrafted free agent, who I don't believe even had a signing bonus and came into camp, and now he's making big plays that make a difference in Minnesota Vikings games. Those kind of stories were left behind for many years when it wasn't so much of a play. What I'm looking for is the next level of this with teams and getting a little more schematically creative. It feels like they're still figuring it out, but there will be, I think, more to go as we go forward in the future.
Yeah, I think, we still haven't seen our first reverse in the NFL. There's got to be a team that's willing to try that. And I think that Well, the NFL's have allowed 3 blockers to not be on the setup zone line, and I want to see more teams instead of just catching and covering there. See more teams trying to play more cross blocking. What it really turns into is a giant running play,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if every team's figured that out. We still have some teams facing backwards, like they're on
Yeah.
a normal kickoff return.
Yeah.
But it's really a giant running play. So cross blocking, trap blocking, zone, double teams, all of those work. And I think the big thing, and for all the people listening, because I know every special teams coordinator is going to listen to this, get to the edge. There is so much more value. You can turn an 11-on-11 play into a 4-on-3 play if you just get to the edge. So that's my call to all the people listening.
Well, we will see if Vikings and Chargers is impacted by the kickoff, and I will be thinking of you and Prime Vision. I'll be in the stadium, of course, but if fans have a chance to check it out, I absolutely implore you. If you are an analytics person or interested in a different version, feel free to check it out. Sam Schwartzstein, I admire you a great deal, my friend, an innovator in football and a great follow on Twitter, and also you're still an offensive lineman at heart. So you got a little bit of that in you as well. So, but an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Have a great broadcast, man.
Likewise. Thanks so much.
Sam Schwartzstein there, one of my favorite people in the NFL space. Thursday Night Football, Prime Vision, if you get a chance to check that out. Really cool, really unique and innovative spin on an NFL broadcast. Tomorrow night, the pregame on Amazon starts at 6, and then kickoff and when Prime Vision starts, of course, at 7 o'clock. And there will be a postgame pretty late Central Time, but it will be on this channel with myself and Dane Mizutani from Los Angeles. Should be a fascinating game. So we've got some time to take some more questions, comments, and I've also got another conversation with Steven Haglund for a hardcore breakdown of the matchups for this game, which, it really feels like, let me give you the FanDuel question of the day first, get back to that, and then we'll talk about what this game feels like. The FanDuel question of the day is Justin Herbert's over-under for this game, 255.5 yards. From what you guys have seen for the Vikings defense, your trust level that they could keep him under 255.5 yards. So if you're just joining, you haven't answered the question yet, what's your trust that the Vikings defense can go to battle with a really good quarterback and a lot of weapons and at least contain Justin Herbert? They certainly did not do that last time. So this feels like gosh, how do I put this? It feels like when you go to the last day of school and you know that summer is on the way, but you still have a test. That's what it feels like. Because if Carson Wentz goes in and wins this game, then the outlook for this team and their even just watchability, and I've seen some of you say in the comments, like, I just want to watch JJ McCarthy play football. Even if they don't make the playoffs, it is what it is. Or even if there are ups and downs, it's a roller coaster. Just want to start seeing what the 10th overall draft pick in the 2024 draft has to bring the Minnesota Vikings. And to also, like, a lot of you who are Vikings fans have gotten very, very good over the years at thinking from a bigger picture perspective, thinking about timelines, thinking about a front office sort of style way of analyzing where your franchise is at, which is great for the show because we can have these higher level conversations. But I think everybody who thinks that way, not just sort of week to week, are you going to beat this team or not, but really on the how the front office has to think about things, the coaching staff, is the bigger sample you can get of JJ McCarthy, the better you can understand of what's going to happen at the quarterback position. Because if JJ McCarthy gets in and plays 10 games, by the end of that 10 games, you should be able to look at it and say, here is generally what you have. And there's 3 things that it could be. It could be absolutely terrible. It could be up and down, 50-50, or it can be absolutely awesome. Those are usually the only way it goes. Maybe there's some gray area in between those 3 things, but I think we could all probably, by the end of the 10 games, put JJ McCarthy's first performance in one of those buckets. And I saw the other day, and gosh, I'm sorry, I forgot who said this, but there's so many good analytics people that are posting stuff all the time. I forget who said it, but someone posted a a chart about young quarterbacks and how quickly they show signs of being good. And is it within a couple games? No, not really. But as the sample size starts to grow, there should be signs. And Bo Nix is an example of this. I'm not sure he's great, but at least he's good enough to win games with for the Denver Broncos. But a good example where last year, early on, very, very ugly. And then it turned that corner and he played very well. And that's where your team in Denver is deciding, hey, we're going to go forward and build around this kid and everything else, right? If JJ McCarthy has a similar thing, then we could put it in the absolutely awesome category of, all right, well, that means you're good. And if you put it in the 50-50, then maybe you want to have somebody competing with him next year in training camp. And then if it's absolutely awful, then you might know that you better go find the next Sam Darnold because this could go sideways pretty quickly. And we've seen all phases of that from different quarterbacks. I mean, even Drake May, for example, you get to the end of last year and it was not absolutely awesome. Last year, it was probably under that 50-50 category. They had games where he was great, games where he was terrible. The circumstances were really bad, of course, but they knew that Drake May was not absolutely awful. So you could at least eliminate that because they got enough of games to say it. Now with Michael Penix, it's still very much up in the air right now, but at least from their team standpoint, they saw enough games to say, all right, he's not absolutely awful. We're going to go forward. It's more of a 50-50. That's who he's been so far. But usually you get a sense from 10 to 12 games, which if he plays that many and it's also a feel thing for everybody. All of you have watched enough football. I've watched enough football where if the ball's coming out, which I talk about all the time, making the right reads, making plays out of structure, even if you lose some of those games, and even if you come out with 3 interceptions one day, but you made a bunch of plays and you fought your tail off and it looked like the ball was coming out, but just some bad things went your way. Well, that usually can be analyzed in the bigger picture as being good, even if it's a bad moment for a young quarterback, but you got to start to see it. And all of us feel that way. The media feels that way. The fans feel that way. The front office, the players, everybody wants to see him get back and start finding out. So with Kevin O'Connell more or less suggesting that against Detroit, I mean, when he said if it was a Sunday game this week, he would probably have a chance to play. So the fact that he would say that really strongly indicates that he'll play against Detroit. That's why this feels like the last day of school where you kind of got to take your medicine, eat your vegetables, and watch Carson Wentz play for one more game. And I know there's a lot of Carson Wentz fans in the Dakotas, and you guys know, not disrespecting Carson at all. He's done a phenomenal job to go 2-2, and 2 good teams beat him, 2 bad teams he beat. That's what you expect. And this is a mid team. Can he beat a mid team, get them to 3-2? Then he's a hero of the season if he could get them to 3-2. And then it's summertime again, and you can start getting excited about a Vikings game instead of what has been a lot of dread leading up to this and a lot of stuff on the interwebs that's made it, I think, even worse with the speculation about McCarthy and the injury and do they want to play him? Is it a soft benching? It hasn't been any fun. It has not been a lick of fun. I mean, Cincinnati I don't think the Cleveland game was fun at all for fans to watch. I think that one was pretty miserable. And then, okay, the season's not over. They found a way to win, but it wasn't a fun game that you're going to go dig up on YouTube 20 years from now. So there hasn't been a whole lot of high entertainment value from this team or even a lot of intrigue because you know exactly what Wentz is. All of the sudden, those things are back on the table of the intrigue goes up to 10 out of 10 with JJ McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell's quarterback whispering. Well, he can whisper again instead of wanting to scream watching Carson Wentz intentionally ground the ball or throw it against the sim pressure for a pick 6. But that connection of McCarthy and O'Connell, and it starts to, kick up again that conversation of can he get the most out of this young quarterback and how can they set up the offense for him and how can they scheme and, what's he going to look like with Darrisaw and Addison, all those things that we talked about leading into it. And then it was just sort of slammed the door in everybody's face and said, well, no, sorry, you've got to stay in the dark for a few more weeks. So it does feel like school will be out after this, but if you fail the test, then you're going to have to repeat the grade, and then they cannot fail the test. So let's get back to your questions, comments in about maybe 20, 30 minutes. We'll bring in Steven Haglund, who covers the Chargers for the Guilty as Charged podcast. Really, really good analyst. So that's coming up a bit later. Will says the Vikings are 0-7 in road Thursday night football games. I did not know that. If that is indeed a correct statistic, I've always thought, and you remember if you go back to the beginning of the schedule when it was released and we do our, hey, we're going to pick every game and so forth. I mean, I think I picked this as a loss, and I may have declared it the hardest game on the entire schedule. Now, that's changed a little bit because of who the Chargers have been, but I think that the actual challenge of playing a super physical team like the Philadelphia Eagles and then 3.5 days later saying, hey, you got to go play another team that loves to play physical. Now, they haven't been that this year. I thought that they would be more so that than they have been for the Chargers, but you have to go play in Los Angeles. I would expect that there will be a good amount of purple, but I don't think it's the same as if it's a Sunday game. If it was a Sunday game, you can fly out and make it a little vacation, fly out on a Friday, stay there, fly out after the game on Sunday for all the Vikings fans. It's a little harder for people to fly out. And there's a lot of expats out there. There's a lot of people who are Vikings fans in California who I'm sure have circled this game, and Chargers fans have to be down. So I'll be really interested about just what the crowd is going to look like for this game, because last year I remember thinking when I first got there into the press box and I'm watching the stadium fill up and I'm like, man, that's a lot of purple. Like they're going to take over the stadium. But what I didn't realize is that the locals, they get stuck in traffic. So they get there halfway through the first quarter, and it was a Rams crowd. And I think the Vikings were surprised that it was. I don't think that they expected to have so much trouble with the noise. So I'll be curious now that the Chargers are a better team and Harbaugh's their coach and Herbert's their quarterback. Like they're a worthwhile franchise to go watch. It's not like Vegas where that's just a disaster and you get 90% purple there. Like what the percentage split is, I might guess maybe close to 60-40 Chargers, but I just don't know if the Chargers have the same connection as the Los Angeles Rams used to before they moved to St. Louis and then came back. Like there's a lot of lifelong fans there. But as far as just going on the road on Thursday night, it's not an easy thing to do. It's a short week. And when Carson Wentz is saying, well, you need every minute, every second of preparation, but you just don't get that many minutes or seconds of preparation when you're, when you're talking about playing on the road on Thursday. Now, here's another one. Is this true that Carson Wentz is 7-0 on Thursday night? Are you guys making these up? Because that sounds these sound fake, but maybe it's not. I mean, I'm trying to think if I remember a Thursday night game that I've covered for the Vikings on the road that they've won. I guess I would have to think about that. I mean, I remember the home ones, like against, wasn't Washington when Case Keenum came back a Thursday night. They lost to Dallas when Mike Zimmer poked his eye out. I mean, there's been some memorable ones of these Thursday night football games, but I can't confirm on the fly whether those statistics are real or not. NTV Res Runner says 3-4 going into Detroit would be not the best of circumstances. I think 3-4 going into Detroit feels like a disaster. I mean, there's a very good argument that Detroit is the best team in the NFL, and I don't think they're flawless because I don't think any team in the NFL is flawless. But if we look on FanDuel, I'm curious as of right now, after that very impressive win the other night. Yeah, Detroit is plus 700 to win the Super Bowl. The only team ahead of them is Kansas City. Tells you a lot about what people think of the Detroit Lions, and that's the next opponent. But, their defense is not flawless by any means, hasn't been so far this year. So J.J. McCarthy playing against them, you feel okay about that. They've been rushing the passer a little better than maybe I expected them to this year, but still, like you feel okay. All right, you're a division opponent, like go play, right? But if you lose that game and you're still 500, well, again, you're still sort of in the race. But if you're 3-4 and you're dropping to 3-5, that feels like the season has just completely gotten away from you. Also wanted to shout out, I didn't even realize the enormous super chat from Pizza Guy. Thank you so much for that. I always say like those super chats, I'll answer any question. Like you don't have to feel like you have to. I know some YouTubers do that. Like they'll only answer the questions where people pay. I don't ever want to be that guy, but hey, man, just wow, can't thank you enough. Little things like that go a long way when, I'm running the whole business here myself. So really, really appreciate that, Pizza Guy. Will, FanDuel, but you did, you could have just given me pizza. That also would have helped. Anyway, Will says FanDuel over under on Diet Dr. Peppers this week for me. Well, I've already got, I've racked up like a bunch of them here. I actually was trying to mix in a little bit of water because I feel like I've had too many Diet Dr. Peppers this week. But these travel games are, they're long. They're fun, but they're long because it's a flight out there tomorrow morning and then kind of right to the stadium, get a little food, go right to the stadium, 5:00 local time out there, kickoff. And then after the game, come up from the locker room, record the podcast, write, the reaction article from the locker room and all that sort of stuff. And then the drive back home to some family that's out there is a little bit of a ways in LA traffic. So it's a long day, but we'll get, and actually LA, this is just details that don't matter at all. And I'll get back to the football talk. LA has metal cups. And let me tell you, metal cups, diet, whatever they have out there, put a little ice in it. It will just stay cold and you can use the same cup as opposed to plastic cups. Use the same cup all night. It's ice cold, tastes delicious. So those of you who drink a lot of diet soda like I do, you might know what I'm talking about when you get it cold like that. So, hey, you asked. Zoomer KO, the Prime Vision broadcast is goated. Love the field goal percentage lines. Oh yeah. No, that's really good. I wonder about those field goal lines, if they've changed it all this year with just how much better kickers have been, if that changes the percentages, because a lot of times, even the kickoff, we had that conversation with Sam Schwartzstein about the kickoff. That ball is really bouncing because it looks like a soccer ball out there. They're pumping it up so much these days that it feels like it's bouncing like crazy. And Miles Price has to play shortstop half the time if they're kicking it that way. Northern Pride says, just want to see McCarthy play, good or bad. Absolutely. Finding out what you have is so interesting in football. And I haven't written off the idea that the Vikings can get hot with McCarthy and turn a corner and be a good team. I just continue to bring up that Broncos team from last year, but it's the same kind of circumstance. It's an inexperienced quarterback, a lot of talent on the roster, a good coach, and the quarterback finds it and they play really well and they get hot down the stretch and they make the playoffs. It happens in the NFL pretty often, where we don't know all the answers to the test after 6 weeks and after a 3-3 record. Like that happens a lot in the NFL where things turn one way or the other. And when you're talking about a different quarterback, it can always turn in one way or the other. But I think what the problem with a lot of folks had, just from an entertainment standpoint and an intrigue standpoint and the finding out part, was the possibility even that Carson Wentz could play well enough to be the starting quarterback and that it could become a locker room thing and everything else. Like he would have to throw for 500 yards for that. I think that after the Philly game, everybody was like, all right, we're on the same page. Like this guy can beat the bad teams. He's going to lose probably to a lot of the good teams and end up 8-9. And that's the ceiling for this. And then that's a backup quarterback. Good job, Carson. But there was no magic surprise. Whoa, it's Sam Darnold again. He's going to win 14 games. And the Philadelphia loss, may have benefited them in that way. Because if Carson Wentz pulls off some crazy, like let's say they get a stop and Wentz pulls off some crazy last second touchdown, 50-yard touchdown to TJ Hawkinson or something. And then we're all going like, wait, if you beat the Chargers, you would have to stay with Wentz until the wheels came off. The loss to Philadelphia made it very easy to go back to McCarthy, regardless of what happens against the Los Angeles Chargers. So you're right that that means that you're going to get to see him. And I think everyone feels a lot better about that, even if it goes downhill, even if he doesn't play well. It's like, well, at least you saw it and you understand what you have there. And now you can go forward as a franchise. Until you see enough JJ McCarthy, then you're just going to feel like you're in purgatory. And that is the hardest place to be in the NFL, is just another team in the league. This was my point about the Arizona Cardinals. I think I said this after the post game. I said, it feels like this team is kind of like the Arizona Cardinals. You're just another team in the league. Like, nobody's really talking about you. Nobody's really thinking about you. You're not really a contender. You're not terrible, but you're just another team in the league. That's how they feel if Carson Wentz is your starter. If JJ McCarthy is a starter, you're one of the more interesting teams because of the amount of talent, because of the coach and quarterback connection, because it's a first rounder. So there's a big gap there. And also, there's a world where you can actually be a contender. Marauder says FanDuel Herbert blows up 255. Will hit that easily. 20% trust. That's the FanDuel question of the day there. And yeah, look, I mean, you could have Justin Herbert throw for over 255 and still lose the game because he's playing from behind. I tend to feel the same way, that the way the secondary has played so far against Rodgers, against Hurts, does not give me a ton of confidence. But one stat that I was looking up is just pass rush win rates. And you'd be very surprised at, like, and I think I brought this up maybe last night about Grenard, but Jonathan Allen has had a good pass rush win rate. Like, they are getting opportunities, but there's just not a lot of dropbacks to go around. And there hasn't been that one kind of breakthrough. You also are playing a quarterback in Rodgers who got rid of it quick, quarterback in Penix who got rid of it quick, running quarterbacks that they faced. Dylan Gabriel, they just didn't allow to do anything. So there hasn't been a quarterback like Herbert who is going to stand in there and throw the football, which means opportunities to actually get sacks. So, that I think there is a chance. Northern Pride is 50-50 on 255.5 on FanDuel for Justin Herbert. Name says couldn't contain the Eagles, felt like they were hyper-focused on keeping Barkley and the quarterback shelved, who honestly still don't even know what the team's identity or their weak points. Yeah, I mean, I think that we can identify some of the weak points. I mean, yes, you're right that they did put a lot of guys in the box, which they don't always do, and they really wanted to make sure that Saquon Barkley was not going to light them up in that game. I mean, I think also Judkin's performance, the Kenneth Gainwell game that we'll never forget, that probably got in their head a little bit. I'm sure that it would when you're talking about such dominant run performances against them. Then, hey, here comes Saquon Barkley. But it's not like they forgot about the wide receivers. They just couldn't cover them. And that would be, and the same thing with DK Metcalf. They didn't forget about DK. They just couldn't stop him. And that's where, okay, this team's got a bunch of weapons. Can they actually stop them? Can they prove to anyone that they can cover? Because when you go around the secondary, Okudah has been, so far, anytime on the field, somebody the opposing team's going to target right away. Rodgers was amazing in that one game. The rest of the way has just been okay. I can pull up Rodgers' overall statistics this season because that was a really tough game. 29.3 PFF grade deserved in that game. So his grades outside of the 99, the insane 2 touchdown, have been 52, 60, 51, 61, 29, which is not all that great overall. That's a lot of average type of play from Isaiah Rodgers, who has been a backup for a lot of his career. And maybe we saw some of the reason for that in the game. Now, I think with corners, it's so up and down, and that is the nature of the beast. But I don't think the teams are going to be terrified of throwing his way. They've just avoided throwing at Byron Murphy. Theo Jackson hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities to make plays, but also hasn't shut people down. And using Josh Metellus as a deep safety was a difficult thing for them to do. So there's just a lot of, I don't want to even say weakness, but areas where you could see a team's not being afraid to attack in the secondary and matchups that they can win. That is the way I might put it, is that when you have Ladd McConkey and he's a slot guy, or Keenan Allen's a slot guy, and they're running short area stuff, if you end up with Metellus against him, that's a tough matchup. If you end up with a Quentin Johnston having to be tackled by Isaiah Rodgers with the ball in his hands, it's just a tough matchup. So their weapons have the edge here. And that's why I probably would say that the confidence isn't that high that they can keep Herbert down. To me, it's all about sacks, strip sacks, and interceptions if they want to win this game. RJ says such a 50-50 game. It's scary. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, the Chargers on FanDuel favored by 3.5, which is basically a coin flip when you consider the road part of it, if they're still factoring that in. Marauder says could take 20 to 30 games. I assume you mean to figure out who JJ McCarthy is. See, I don't think so. I don't think it will take 20 to 30 games for us to have a really good sense of it. Now, somebody like Sam Darnold played 50 games and nobody knew how good he was. But here's why I don't think it will take as many to figure out with JJ McCarthy. This team is good. They have the best receivers. They have a good offensive line when it's healthy. They have a coach who won 14 games with Sam Darnold last year and whose quarterbacks have performed traditionally at a pretty high level and comes from the best system for quarterbacks in McVay. And I know that, there's nitpicks and critiques and everything else, but my gosh, you saw how many receivers were open last week, right? That's what usually makes it hard. So evaluating Cam Ward, good luck. Cam Ward, I mean, my God, that guy has nothing. Terrible coaching, terrible weapons. Tyler Lockett was their big signing, and Kelvin Ridley, these washed guys. I mean, how are you supposed to figure out if Cam Ward can play? That's really hard to do. Even Bryce Young a couple of years ago, how are you supposed to, you just had nothing. How are you supposed to figure out if Bryce Young could play in year one when he's got nothing around him? That was the Sam Darnold thing. That no receivers, bad offensive coordinator, they fire the coach. Like, what? How do we even know? Here, none of that's true. None of those things are true. All the opportunities are there. And that's where, when you look around, and Jalen Hurts is an example, Jalen Hurts' first time starting, he was not amazing. But I think you could tell, oh, there's something here. And I'll say that for Jordan Love too. I remember Jordan Love, they lost a game to the Atlanta Falcons. I think he fumbled a snap or something really dumb, but he played with command of the game. And I remember doing a podcast talking about it and being like, I don't know, I think that he can at least play. And he had some bad moments in that first year, but there's a level of, does he look like he can at least play? And then the rest might come along. Bo Nix was the same way last year. I just keep going back to that. But thinking about first impressions of quarterbacks and how often it's usually just right what the smell test was if they were playing for a good team. Justin Herbert's smell test immediately was really good. He wasn't even playing for a good team. Matt Stafford had bad teams forever. That was a harder one to figure out. Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow's a good example. I mean, he had T. Higgins and he had Jamar Chase in his second year, and you could see it right away in 2021 that he knew what he was doing and he had good weapons and a system that came kind of from that Los Angeles. And then, okay, it looks like it's supposed to look. So no, we still don't know on a lot of quarterbacks overall, like the shades. I mean, and Daniel Jones proves that, but Daniel Jones, another guy that when he had one good team around him, he went to the playoffs, won a playoff game, and at least you knew that was there with Daniel Jones. So that wasn't his first year starting, but even in his first year, he showed some signs, Jones. It's not like he's just always been terrible. There's a reason that KOC wanted him here. So usually if you have a good circumstance and you see some signs that the guy can be good, then we know right away that there's something there. Even if it's not the entire picture with a quarterback, which takes a lifetime sometimes, because I always thought that Matthew Stafford was just pretty good, but not great, and tried to play way too much hero ball and threw way too many bad picks and took way too many bad sacks. I did a big analysis piece analytically breaking down Kirk versus Stafford, and the high end, of course, of Stafford was higher, but Kirk was more consistent. It was like, I don't know, I think they're in the same bucket. And then he goes to LA and he makes big improvements. I mean, he played so much more in system. Actually, when he's got less athleticism, he's been better. And then he's got Cooper Kupp, he gets Puka Nacua, he's got McVay, and now, I mean, he's, I think, probably going to go to the Hall of Fame, Matthew Stafford. Or at least there's a real discussion about it, and things change, circumstances, but not just that, but also players change, players grow, players improve. Sam Darnold looks way better than he did. I watched that tape of him going 4-2 for Carolina, and he looks way better than he looked then. So guys get better. So to your point, I mean, sometimes it's not even 20 or 30 games. Sometimes it is 50 games until we really, really, truly know and we see the whole picture. But at least get a sense when you have a really good team. That's kind of the point. KFT says many quarterbacks have been given up on before they had a chance to prove it. Mayfield and Darnold are two recent quarterbacks before they took a step toward showing out. So those two examples, hey, by the way, I mean, you talk about giving up on like someone like Sam Darnold. Carolina traded a 2nd-round pick for Sam Darnold. Like they saw, he had even shown in his time in New York enough flashes for a team to believe that he could still be that guy. Now, Mayfield, you're right. Cleveland gave up on him. But again, he took them to 11 wins. He was within 1 or 2 throws of beating the Kansas City Chiefs in a playoff game. It's not that usually if they eventually become something, there were at least signs somewhere along the way. Geno Smith was maybe the example of someone who was absolutely atrocious and showed no sign and then got better. But in the last few years, that looks more like a pop-up season for 2022 than the reality with Geno Smith. But there's very few examples of someone who just has no success whatsoever in a good circumstance and then turns out to be really good. Usually, and Jared Goff's second year was kind of my example for what McCarthy could be, which is, yeah, there's limitations to this scheme, but he also is able to function and operate it with a good circumstance. Goff was only a second-year player when he led a number 1 offense in 2017 for the Rams. So usually when you have a good situation, then you can properly evaluate. You can properly evaluate what that guy is going to be. Not to say that we know the whole picture, but at least what the Vikings need to know is those 3 outcomes. Are you really looking for another quarterback? Like, this has gone way wrong. Go find somebody else. Are you considering a quarterback competition because there were ups and downs, so you got to have a backup plan? Or are you locked dead set? Max Brosmer could be the backup. I don't care who the backup is. He's the dude going forward, going into next year. You need to know that. And at least you'll have a percentage of that through 10 games. That's my point. Either way, I mean, we all want to start seeing him. So yeah, even if you say it's going to take, 100 games, like, well, let's start. You got to start somewhere. You got to start with game 3 before you can get to whenever you get to the complete story. So anyway, well, let's see. Get yourself an insulated koozie and it will stay cold. Well, normally I just drink it so fast that it doesn't really matter. To tell you the truth, it's usually still cold by the time I'm finished. If it's a can, if it's a bottle, it takes a little longer. LDR believer Herbert about 280 yards. Vikings defense levels out and starts to get some turnovers. That's, I think, the regression part of it, getting turnovers. They just have not gotten any or sacks. That's pretty unusual for a team with this much talent. That should start to happen. So I agree. That was answering that FanDuel question of the day, 255.5 Herbert's over under. And what are the chances the Vikings are able to keep him under? Adrian said, don't know why the Vikings would trade away Blackman if he isn't a CB2-3. Needed him for some depth. Same goes for Phillips. I don't agree on Phillips. I think that Jalen Redmond has been better than Harrison Phillips. It's really that they were missing Cashman. They were missing Metellus playing in the box. They were missing, and they were playing Javon Hargrave too much. But Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond have just been just as good. And I think Redmond has been better than we ever really saw from Harrison Phillips. As much respect as I have for Phillips as a great run stopper, Redmond is getting in the backfield and making plays. So there's a reason that they did that. That I'm not so concerned about. With Blackman, if you look at how he's played in Indianapolis, numbers wise, it hasn't really been very good. It's part of a great defense. I think the overlooked one is Cam Bynum. I think if we're gonna say, hey, that was a guy that you should not have let go, it's Bynum. I don't think it's Blackman. I think the problem with Blackman is that they didn't replace him. Is that they thought, well, Jeff Okudah had a good camp. He's a physical guy. We'll use him instead. And they also probably expected Harrison Smith to be 100% and then have Metellus playing his typical role, but that didn't happen either. But Fabian Moreau is the only guy brought in after cutdowns and all that. That's where, and look, if you're redoing it's probably, if you were going to trade away the equivalent of a 4th round pick for somebody, a corner would have made more sense than what they got out of Adam Thielen for that. And I think Thielen will still make some plays for this team as they go forward and is good for JJ McCarthy. And I think that trade has a chance to look much better down the road as he rotates in as a wide receiver, especially if someone gets hurt. But not getting another corner and saying, I think Okudah is going to be fine. That one right there is the one, rather than, well, getting rid of Blackman. But he hasn't played that well, and I saw him in camp, and I totally understood it. It just didn't look like the same guy. But Bynum, I think, was a unique player. Intelligence, not just the character gets made a lot out of, and he's A+ when it comes to that, but football intelligence, and also had a lot more toughness than I think people gave him credit for because of his size, downhill tackler, playmaker in the secondary. And I think that even though, Theo Jackson will make some plays eventually, that the drop off there has been more than we thought. Safety has been a position that we often think, oh, you just get another guy. And this has been a team, just get another guy. But maybe Bynum was not just another guy. I think he was well above average. So I don't look at it like those two. I look at it like Bynum. Let's see. Ahmed, has anyone asked KOC if JJ was 100% healthy right now, if he would be starting? Wonder if KOC would give a straight answer. Well, the answer is clearly yes after Philadelphia. And he more or less said it when it came to what he said on, well, not Friday. What day was that? Tuesday. Yeah. Normally that would be a Friday, but Tuesday. What he said on Tuesday was just that he strongly insinuated it. So I can't say for 100% sure that he'll be back or that he would be the starter if he's 100% healthy. But he did say if it was a Sunday game, he would be ready to go, which sounds to me like that. I think that's a fair way to interpret it. And what Kevin O'Connell had to do here was leave the door at least open a crack that Carson Wentz was just amazing. And when I talk about how nobody knows anything when it comes to quarterbacks, it's true. They didn't know how Carson Wentz was really going to play when he got in there. And then his first game against Cincinnati is pretty awesome. And you're like, well, I don't know, maybe. With Sam Darnold did it last year, maybe. So if Carson Wentz had beaten Philadelphia and then went out to LA and dominated, and he wasn't banged up in 5 different ways, they would have stuck with him. I'm sure they would have just said, hey, we're going to roll with the veteran and he gives us the best chance to win. So they didn't want to commit to McCarthy coming back if there was a chance Wentz was going to be great. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that if they were fully locked in 1000% on JJ McCarthy, then they wouldn't have even left that door open. They would have said, yeah, McCarthy's our guy when he comes back. But after only playing 2 games, how can you even say that? So, this is where once Wentz shows you that he's not the guy who's going to shockingly take you to the Super Bowl, then, okay, go back to JJ McCarthy and carry on with the plan. Adrian says, what is Wes Phillips' role as the offensive coordinator since he's not calling plays? So, Kevin O'Connell didn't call plays for the Rams either. Keep that in mind. And there's quite a few offensive coordinators that don't. One thing is the game plan. The head coach does not have time because he is managing every aspect of a franchise to sit in his office and create an entire game plan by himself. So the offensive coordinator, along with the other position coaches, and the coordinator leads these meetings, they get together and they put together the game plan. So they're looking at what plays they think will work for next week, the breakdowns of their players and what schemes they think they want to use against the other team. They've watched tape on the other team and they've taken a ton of notes and they've looked at the data, and that's like what they're doing every day. These position coaches, and Phillips is the one who's leading that discussion of how are we going to attack the next team and put together this game plan. So then they put together all the plays. Let's just call it 100 because I don't know how many plays they go into with a game. Matt Nagy said something that goes into 300. I remember that. Like, I don't know, man, that's a lot. Anyway, so let's just call it 100. So they put together 100 plays that are going to be on the play sheet for the next game based on what they've seen from each one of their positions. How do you want the offensive line to block effectively? The run coordinator, what's he think is going to work schematically? The pass game coordinator, along with Josh McCown, and what they think will work as far as concepts. And then they put it together and then they present it to the head coach, and the head coach goes through it. This is just my understanding of generally, like, I'm not saying that they've brought me in the room, like generally with what offensive coordinators will do. And so then they bring it together. The head coach goes over the game plan. All right, here's my ideas. Here's your ideas. This is Tuesday, every Tuesday. This is a full day long process. So it's not just like, hey coach, here's a couple plays. Like, this is a very meticulous thing. They work sometimes into the night, going through it and picking apart every detail. And then they decide on the play sheet and what they're going to teach the players when they come in on Wednesday as the next game plan. That's my understanding of the process. So Wes Phillips is leading that. Just the way Kevin O'Connell was. And it's the right-hand man to the coordinators or to the other coaches is the coordinators. So, Brian Flores, it's a little different. He's with his group is putting together the plays and meeting with players, but he's only covering that one side of the ball where the head coach is going through both sides. So that's at least my feeling on it. Again, they haven't brought me into these meetings, but just that's usually in general how that works. And even the play calling at the end of the day, like in the head coach's headset, they are talking through the entire game, whether it's the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach, like they're in his headset saying sometimes, hey, this is what I see. We should do this. This play is what we should use here because I saw this. They have Ben Ellefson is a coach up in the box where he's taking notes of every coverage that they faced. He told me this when I did a story on him last year, that's one of his jobs on game day is he has to see the defensive coverages. I think that's what he said. And he writes it down for what coverage the opposing team played for every play. And then they look at it of like, oh, okay, they've played this against our plays. And it's basically like real-time charting. It's not so easy to do. You got to have a lot of experience for that. But that feedback is then sent down to the coach when they're looking at certain plays. All right, here's what we're facing, and it's just pure chaos. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with the offensive coordinator. Andrew, what's Purple Insider analysis of the Timberwolves, Blazers? Okay. It would be listen to Dane Moore, really good friend of mine, Dane Moore, NBA podcast. Great analysis. John Krasinski, we know, does a great job over there. Jace Frederick, a good friend of mine. So great media over there. Follow them. They know more than I do. Links I can do. Wolves, I don't know. Anthony Edwards, good. How about that? I'm not your Wolves expert, but they got some good media over there. Ahmed says hindsight 2020, but having Cam Scatabo on this team, he's so much fun to watch. Well, yeah, like I think Scatabo is probably a guy who a lot of people overthought a little bit. But then at the same time, don't you draft a running back like that in the 4th round? Like you only draft Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson in the 1st. And even then you got to hit on it and you got to have the right circumstance. Cause if you draft Ashton Genty and you can't block for him, it's going to be pretty bad. So yeah, I guess if they had a bunch of draft picks, maybe that would have worked out. Adrian playing Hargrave too much. Why are the Vikings paying that much money then? Well, he's making $15 million a year. The top defensive tackles are making $10 million more than him. So that's kind of rotational money in free agency for somebody like Javon Hargrave, rotational pass rusher type of money. I mean, Milton Williams made $26 million and he played 500 snaps last year. Like, it's a position, pass rushing DT, that gets paid a lot of money. And the reason you do it is you overpay for guys around your rookie quarterback contract. Like, we've been over that. You overpay to make sure you get them, and you don't worry that much about the implications of how much they're being paid because you have this cheat code at the quarterback position, and you can do that. That's the model to do it. Now, has he been good enough would be the question, and the answer is no, he has not been good enough so far to justify it. I thought he was really good against the Browns. He was really good against the Bears, and they need him to get after the passer. But if he only plays 20 to 25 snaps per game and it's all pass rush, I'm good with that for 15 mil. I mean, if you're asking Jonathan Allen to play 50 snaps at 21 mil and it's not at the level that you were looking for, I think that's a different story. But Redmond has forced their hand. Sometimes the backup is just better. Like, he is just good. That guy has been a beast. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're going to reduce the number of snaps for the veteran player because the younger player has been awesome. Norse Force is pace in the doghouse. I think that there's some realities of Ivan Pace that have really shown themselves this year. That when you have Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard, and their jobs are to just hold guys in place with their size and strength, then Ivan Pace can shoot gaps and he could just hit guys and kind of be a Wolverine. And that's all they really need him to do. But when you're playing a little bit different, I don't think that fits for him. I also think that he's never really been the best in terms of identifying things coverage wise. They're not a guy that they could give the green dot to. They had to do that in 23. It didn't work out that great. And also, like, this is a credit to Eric Wilson. I think Wilson's been good. So they just decided to go with the better player. That's really all it is they just went with the better player, and then they want Metellus in the box as well. But unfortunately for Ivan Pace, that ends up with him being, as you said, in the doghouse. Lenny says, has anyone else lost interest in the season with Carson Wentz at quarterback? Well, that's the point of my going to school for the last day with a test, is that, yes, I mean, I've felt that from Vikings fans since the minute that he got in. And my numbers would suggest that too, by the way, in terms of live viewers, although there's a lot of you right now, so I appreciate that. But in terms of viewership and in terms of readership and all that, I mean, it's purgatory. It feels like you're kind of going nowhere, spinning your wheels, as long as a 30-plus-year-old journeyman backup is your quarterback. And that's why I think O'Connell's comments were basically, hey, there's light at the end of the tunnel here, and J.J. McCarthy is very likely to come back. So, yes, I think a lot of people feel that way, but this is also a huge game. So you can feel that way. Yes, okay, lost interest, don't want to watch Carson Wentz, but dude, you need this game. If you want J.J. McCarthy to get back at a time where he's got a position to go chase the playoffs, you really got to win this. Because if you fall behind, it's going to be really, really tough for him to ask J.J. McCarthy to go, let's see, if he plays 10 games the rest of the way and wins 7 of them or something to get in the playoffs, that's too much. You want to be in a position where you could say, hey, even if you go 5-5, you got a chance. DL, Vikings need to quit the used quarterback bin. Well, they can't, because to J.J. McCarthy, they did. They did quit it. That's what they did. He's not healthy. I mean, I've seen this a lot. Like, what are they thinking with Carson Wentz? You're like, who were they supposed to play? Joe Montana? Like, if JJ was healthy, he would be the quarterback. They have not benched JJ for Carson Wentz. That never happened. The people want to say that, but it never happened. And there was always that little crack of a door open that Wentz could just be great and lead them to the top of the division, but that wasn't ever really very likely either. David says the Vikings need to trade for Budda Baker. Look, I love Budda Baker. Huge fan for that. They should not trade for anybody. They should not, this team right now. You can't give up future draft capital when you're 500. Just can't be doing that. Zoomer says we could trade Thielen back to the Panthers if we lose to the Chargers. Well, that's right. That trade will feel like, if this falls apart, that trade will feel like a massive failure. I agree. And I shouldn't say massive. I mean, it wasn't that much, but it will feel like an L. If even if he's an occasional difference maker and ends up with 15 catches and a couple of touchdowns, and he's already converted a few third downs, those are good plays for them. That's okay. That's okay to trade something for. But if the season goes down the well and you end up talking about, well, look, there's just nothing left here and they're going to win 7 games, then yeah, then that trade was very bad. Adrian, do the Vikings have a developmental problem? Seems like only a few mid to late round picks have contributed to the team the last couple years. Well, let's see. You got Jalen Redmond is one of those guys that's been impressive. Josh Metellus has developed under this team. Theo Jackson hasn't been amazing, but another development story. Cam Bynum was a development story. Ivan Pace was until recently. I mean, how many teams have guys that are late round and undrafted free agents that have 7, 8 starters that are great impact players? I mean, look at the Eagles. Who are their best players? Barkley, Carter, Brown, Smith. Anything in common with these guys? I mean, you look at Detroit, and sometimes I just am like, am I taking crazy pills here, guys? How did they get all these great draft picks? Well, Terry and Arnold hasn't been any good. And there's been a few other of their draft picks that are non-impact players, but crazy thing, they tanked and had 1 million picks. So you kind of have to do it one way or the other. If you're going to build a team, you have to choose a path. Either you're going to tank and get 1 million draft picks, which maybe was suggested by the Purple Insider podcast years ago when Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell got here, but that's not the Wilfs way. So the other way to do it is you're drafting 23rd, you're drafting 26th, you're drafting 17th. Well, you're not getting Jahmyr Gibbs usually there. You're not getting Penei Sewell there. You're not getting, Jalen Carter even dropped a little, but the guy was an unbelievable talent. You're not getting Devontae Smith. So what you have to do is you have to go get outside talent a lot of times and then hope to develop a few of those players, which I think they have. I think there's a handful of guys on the team that are contributing from the late round picks, but if you think that there's going to be 10 stars that get developed from that, it's just not likely. Northern Pride, do you think we make any trades before the deadline? I mean, it's possible that they could do that, but I wouldn't advise it. I think if anything, if they lose this game, trade Jalen Naylor to the highest bidder if you can, and let him spread his wings. That's something that they should, probably do. Because that means your shot at making the playoffs. You'll probably be about a, 10% chance already right now. The chances are not high at making the playoffs. If they win, I think you just ride it out. So, Douglas, everyone loves comp picks, but it would have made more sense to have added younger free agents. If they would have cost us extra picks like Milton Williams instead of Hargrave and Allen. Yeah, I think with Milton Williams, they were interested, but the price just went past where they wanted to go. I think if you redid that deal, I haven't looked at how good. Well, let's take a look. How good has Milton Williams been? Let's see. I mean, the Patriots obviously have played well. I have not checked on Milton Williams. Also don't know, did he want to sign here or not? Let's see. Milton Williams right now has a 62.0 PFF grade, 71.8 pass rush, 19 quarterback pressures. That's pretty good. Certainly not worth $26 million. It's pretty good, but there's probably a reason he was a rotational guy for Philly. I mean, that's just okay numbers right there. Is that, I don't know. I know comparing it to Allen, I think that's fine. Yeah. That maybe Milton Williams would have been the better pick. The issue with saying that they needed to get younger free agents is that there's not. If a team has a young player who's awesome, they keep them unless something's really wrong with them. So it's not like there's just guys everywhere who you can sign that it's not Madden. Everybody doesn't hit free agency. So yeah, you could say Milton Williams. I don't think he's lived up to his contract so far versus what they paid for the other guys. But I mean, Allen hasn't lived up to the 21 million either. He needs to get some pressure, some sacks. This is a great game to start. He played really well against Philly, I thought. But no, I mean, I understand that. The whole theory was if you take 10 shots on veteran players who are much cheaper than they would normally be, Ryan Kelly, Aaron Jones, just because of their injury history and their age. If you take 10 shots, well, if you hit on 7 of them, if you hit on either Allen or Hargrave and they're great and they're close to their peak version, it's going to be an awesome signing, right? But they also, when a team keeps their own guys, we never give them credit either. Like Byron Murphy has been pretty good this year, gave up the touchdown to AJ Brown. He's been pretty good. They've stayed away from him. I think they're trying to target other people than Byron Murphy, but they get him to stay. That's a younger free agent into his prime, but we just don't count him because he was already on the team. Will Fries was 27 years old. That's a pretty younger free agent. They extended Darrisaw. That's a younger guy who didn't hit free agency. Grenard in his prime, Cashman in his prime. So I don't know. Like, I think that when they do sign, some of the older players, that becomes kind of the target of the discussion, but they've definitely kept or signed a lot of guys in their prime. Lenny, can we get trade value out of older veterans like Allen? Only if they lose this game would I even think about it, but I just don't think that this ownership ever wants to be the one that's just selling parts. I don't think that they ever really want to be that way. Andrew says, Justin Skol seems to be the preferred as the backup swing over Walter Rouse. Is he really that bad, or do they just want to keep him on the sidelines until he can develop? I do think that, yes, the development part is some of it, but I've liked the way Rouse has looked, even going back to his first training camp as a pass protector. I think he's got more physical talent than Justin Skol. I think a lot of times in the NFL, this is just how it is. It's, hey, this is the veteran. We brought him in to be our swing guy. We're going to trust him. But when Rouse has been out there, he's looked better. I would prefer to play Rouse. But I also don't know what Chris Cooper knows as far as how much of the offense he could get down. I think Skol is a decent run blocker. I don't know. Either way, it's not great. Let's see. Dane says thoughts on Turner. Dallas Turner. Yeah, I think so far Dallas Turner goes under that same category. Like, have you noticed that it's just a trend that every one of these guys has not performed as far as their pressures and sacks at the level we would have expected? And I think I brought this up, but I can pull it up again if Pro Football Reference doesn't melt my computer. But it's the Vikings just haven't faced many passes. So it's hard to get, let me see, can we get defense here? Be patient if this freezes because this website is insane. But let me look. Total pass attempts. Trying to do this quick before it melts down. Okay, so the Vikings have faced 161 pass attempts this year. So guys like Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, Jonathan Allen, they've only had 161 chances to rush the passer along with 16 sacks, so call it 177. The Seattle Seahawks have faced 276 passes. So that is 100 that is like 3 games worth of passes. 3 games worth of dropbacks that Seattle has had to go after the passer that the Vikings haven't had because these teams are running a lot. So 14 pressures on 100 pass rush snaps, that's not a bad production rate. I think that he's been good in terms of getting into the backfield and making some plays as far as a tackler against the run. He has 6 run stops. That's not bad for him. But I also think that he has not shown a lot of signs of, whoa, that is a totally different player than last year. That's what I think you were looking for from him so far. I just think that opportunity needs to happen. Drop backs, ability to chase the passer. And it might be this week. It might be tomorrow because I think that the Chargers will drop back a lot, which again, if you're just jumping in here before I get to Steven Haglund, who's a great guest to break down the matchups in this game, Justin Herbert's over under 255.5 yards. The confidence that the Vikings can hold him underneath that number, that is the FanDuel question of the day. So I am going to, and yes, Adrian, I understand that they did, well, I don't know if you can't call second round picks mid. That's second round picks are starters. Everson Griffin took many years to develop. Daniil Hunter and Stephon Diggs are like all-time outliers. I get what you're saying, but also you need a lot of draft picks to have that happen in order to have that happen. You need more draft picks. You can't trade second round picks for TJ Hawkinson. Like, I get it. I get it. They've, the reality is that they've built a roster that is certainly good enough to win. And with good quarterback play, not even elite quarterback play this year, we would be talking about a 4-2 or 5-1 football team. The reason that this team is not good is not because they effed up every single part of building the roster, like I feel like gets suggested sometimes. And it's not because they've messed up every single draft pick, which isn't true, but gets suggested sometimes. It's because they have been playing a backup quarterback for 4 games, and I know that it's just hard to accept. And because the starting quarterback in his first 2 games didn't play well either. It's hard to accept when the most obvious answer is right there. It's got to be that everybody, the play caller messed up, the drafting messed up, the team building messed up. I don't know. They messed up the audio system in the stadium. It's got to be every other explanation. If you don't get good enough quarterback play, it's like all these same people won 14 games last year with good quarterback play. It's not that hard, my friends. So they will need that against the Chargers. Steven Haglund of Guilty as Charged had a chance to join me a little earlier and want to bring you that conversation. He is great at breaking down the Chargers. So this will be your last look at Vikings Chargers preview before we have the game. And then tomorrow night, I'll be out there. Dane Mizutani and I will have that podcast fired up. It'll be certainly after dark, after we've gone down to the locker room and all that stuff. So if you're staying up with us, I hope to see you all then from LA. But until then, thanks everybody. And here's Steven Haglund. All right, we welcome into the show Steven Haglund of the Guilty as Charged podcast. Love that name. And this is going to be our hardcore matchup preview here with Steven. I think a great place to start, my friend, would be the offensive line of the Chargers versus the Vikings pass rush. It's fascinating that the Vikings have faced so few actual passing plays that when you look at their numbers for sacks and pressures, like what happened from last year, but what's happened is the Vikings have played from behind so much. Other teams are running. And then in Philadelphia's case, when you throw 79-yard touchdowns, not a lot of opportunities to rush the passer. But some of these players that I'm looking at playing for the Chargers offensive line, I'm going to tell you the truth, man. You've gotten to the point where I was like, Bobby Hart is in the league still. So how tragic is it for the Chargers offensive line?
Yeah, it's pretty tragic. It started the season very optimistic, particularly at offensive tackle with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. And, they signed Mekhi Becton in free agency and some question marks at left guard and center, and those remain, right? But the thought process from the Chargers is always like, we have these 2 elite offensive tackles. Let's bring in Mekhi Becton, and those 3 will kind of carry us through the day. Rashawn Slater ruptures his patella tendon about 5 practices after he signs his, contract extension. So they start the season with their backup right tackle, move Joe Alt to left tackle. 3 games into the season, the right tackle gets hurt. Next week after that, Joe Alt gets hurt. The next week after that, the backup who came in for Joe Alt gets hurt. So they're on offensive tackle 5 and 6 right now. I think Joe Alt might be back this week. If he is, that obviously changes this conversation and the calculus quite a bit. But he's still dealing with a high ankle sprain. This would be if he does miss this game, it would be his 4th game missed. So, I think that could be a little optimistic sign for him returning this week, depending on how you feel about like Thursday night games. But Trey Pipkins, who is the starting right tackle now without Rashawn Slater, will not play tonight. So they'll have some backup right tackle and potentially a 5th left tackle of the season. So it's not been fun. Daniel Popper, who I know you had on earlier this week, tweeted out that Justin Herbert has been hit like 20 more times than second place. And so it's been tough. They have trailed a lot. So opposite of the Vikings here. So the teams have been getting a lot of obvious passing situations, and it's not, conducive to a 5th string offensive tackle playing football and protecting Justin Herbert.
Right, absolutely. And how do you think that they're going to deal with the blitz of the Vikings? Now, I'm not sure if the Vikings will blitz as much as they usually do.
Hmm.
The last time they faced the Chargers, I think they blitzed every single play and lived to regret it, because Justin Herbert is
Yeah.
actually really good at getting rid of the football quickly, especially with underneath routes. Keenan Allen gets open. Lad McConkey, short area, is very successful. Now a tight end in Aronde Gadsden, who I think is really good at that. So I don't know if they will blitz, but it really is in the nature of Brian Flores. It's sort of like the "don't do it" meme, like don't say, or the "don't say it," like don't say it, don't. I'm gonna say it, like don't blitz, don't blitz. Okay, we're gonna blitz. Like they tried rushing three one time against Jalen Hurts, and then they were like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. That didn't work. Back to blitzing the heck out of him, which didn't really work all that well. But how equipped are they to handle that when you have, even if Joe Alt is back, you're still dealing with backup offensive linemen?
Yeah, I think from a just like a pure philosophical standpoint, Greg Roman wants to protect with five as much as he possibly can, and he'll chip a lot. Trey Pipkins was getting a lot of chip help in the first few weeks, and Joe Alt obviously leave on an island. They played the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago, and different kind of schematic world. But Anthony Weaver comes from the Wink Martindale mindset. He's not that far behind from Brian Flores in blitz rate so far this season. And essentially, what they did is they put their blocking tight end, his name is Tucker Fisk, and they essentially camped him right next to Bobby Hart and said, "We're going to protect with six all game long. We'll do some other max protects situations with seven blockers, eight blockers at times, but we're always going to have six." And it worked. That was the least amount of pressure that Herbert had faced all season since week two when Trey Pipkins got hurt, and then obviously the Broncos are a different beast in week three. So I would expect we see some kind of similar plan this week. If the Vikings stick to their DNA here, I think we'll see Tucker Fisk just kind of stick next to whoever's playing right tackle. They'll protect with six. They'll chip. If Joe All plays, obviously you can tinker with this a little bit. But if you're dealing with Austin Deculus at left tackle, who they traded for on cutdown day, by the way, they will chip on that side and they'll double team on Bobby Hart's side, and they'll kind of try and wad it up as much as they can. So it's not. Greg Roman knows that this is not a situation where we can just do our usual protect with five kind of situation. We have to protect with six, and we saw them do that against the Dolphins with Tucker Fisk.
Somebody I'm really interested in this conversation of just getting the ball out quickly, because blitz or no blitz, they're probably not going to be able to take on Jonathan Grenard, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave,
Right.
an emerging Jalen Redmond, and even we're seeing some signs from Dallas Turner. We'll see if Andrew Van Ginkel has a chance to come back. That would be a huge addition. There's a lot of names there that can rush
That's
the
a good group.
passer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Blake Cashman is back, who is an excellent blitzer. They use Eric Wilson. Like, they have a lot of dudes that could get after the quarterback. But Quentin Johnston, to me, was somebody that when he was coming out in the draft, that's when Jordan Addison was taken. But I was looking at both of those guys as potential fits. Took a ton of criticism. Johnston did over the first few years, had some issues with the mitts, but feels like has settled into a role here. To me, this is a guy that the Vikings should be concerned about because of his ability to make plays after the catch. So if you can get the ball out, if you get it to Keenan Allen, you will tackle Keenan Allen. He's not going to run for 500 yards,
Keenan
but
Allen will fall, but you will not tackle him. He
yeah,
will
right.
fall.
Hey, that's how you stay in the league for this long
Yep.
and get a chance to play the team you smoke every single time for Keenan
Yep.
Allen. But Quentin Johnston, he's got youthful legs. I think we've seen this in recent weeks, especially against DK Metcalf. The Viking secondary has not been all world when it comes to tackling. Where is Quentin Johnston in terms of this offense, and what kind of weapon has he become?
Yeah, he's I would say he's their designer touch guy. He is the guy that they want to get vertically and horizontally. And they know that his athletic profile is the strength of his game. He's gotten a lot better off of the line of scrimmage. He's gotten a lot better, creating separation at the top of routes. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. The hands, so to speak, have not really been tested as much. We haven't really seen that kind of performance from him yet. But last season against the Ravens, there was a game where he dropped the pass. He dropped a pass three different times, and the Chargers were driving down 10, and it was like third and 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and Justin Herbert hit Quentin Johnson on a crossing route that could have gone for like 40 yards, and he dropped it. And fans at the stadium, this is a home game, fans actively were booing him, and it was a really like sad situation. And the confidence just festered and festered and festered. And then in the playoff game, he was just essentially a non-factor against Derek Stingley. And granted, that's Derek Stingley, but we had real questions of are they going to have to cut this guy in training camp? Are they going to have to bench him for Trey Harris, who they drafted in the second round? At that time, they had Mike Williams. Like, what exactly is Quentin Johnston's role going to be? And credit to him, he has worked his tail off, as a wide receiver. And he, over the first 4 games, he was their most productive receiver. And then he also got injured himself. He only missed the 1 game, but so he's back now. He's healthy. He leads the team in targets, leads the team in yards. He's been extremely productive. And actually, in the first 4 games, he was the first Chargers pass catcher to go over 70 yards in 4 straight games since Antonio Gates in like 2012. So
Wow.
he's playing really, really well. The confidence is just at a much higher rate, and Herbert trusts him at a much higher rate. So, he's their primary vertical receiver, their primary, design touch guy. They'll do jet sweeps with him, stuff like that. When it matters, they haven't really gone to him on 3rd downs, but they want to get him the ball early, first down touches. Let's get him in the red zone. He's that kind of weapon for them right now.
When you said since, I was hoping I could throw out some sort of like early 80s Wes Chandler reference or John Jefferson, but okay, since the era of Antonio Gates. But I think that this is something the Vikings should be really terrified about, is the number of weapons that can make plays and that can maintain possession. The 21 play drive, like that's not something that the Vikings want to face. Is the other team wearing down their defense, because then
Yeah.
you can run the ball against them, as we saw from teams like the Browns and teams like the Steelers. Not so much last week. Philadelphia just lost their ability to run the ball, but we have seen it earlier in the season. That's where I'm very curious about Becton here, because he was someone that we talked about. They ultimately go with Will Fries. Just doesn't look like he's fit in with Los Angeles as much as he did with Philadelphia, where he was the perfect mauler type. Does this just speak to how much it matters who you play next to when it comes to the offensive line, or has he just been disappointing?
I think who he plays next to is definitely a part of it, but the Chargers started the season doing a lot of the like usual Greg Roman gap scheme stuff, and then they lost Najee Harris, and they figured out pretty quick, hey, let's get this Omarion Hampton guy out on the edges, and so they kind of pivoted the entire identity of their run game to crack toss, play calls, counters. They wanted to get Omarion Hampton on the edges as much as possible. And they're still doing that with Kamani Vidal. Not so much this past week because they were trailing 20-3, like right out the gate, essentially. So that's they're playing to the strength of their running backs, and so Mekhi Becton is just not really the kind of athlete that you want to go out on perimeter blocks right now. Like, he is very much a let's move forward kind of blocker. I will say, up until this past week, I think he has improved quite a lot as a pass protector. He allowed 7 pressures against DeForest Buckner, which was not great, but that's DeForest Buckner. I guess he can do that from time to time. But up until last Sunday, he was top 15 in the league in pass blocking efficiency rating. And so I think it's been a mixed bag, I would say. The run blocking is not really fit to his identity, I would say, as a player. But for the most part, as a pass protector, he's looked a lot better than he did in Philadelphia, which was his first year playing guard as well.
I also think with that Buckner stat, it really speaks to the game script and how it goes.
Yeah.
Just making such a difference, because if you're
they
asking,
dropped back 60 times on Sunday against the Colts. So
right. So 7 pressures even is not that many in comparison to how many dropbacks you're talking about. But I think that's where the Vikings want them to have to live, is from behind in the drop back game and make Justin Herbert try to push the ball down the field to score quickly. But the Vikings haven't been able to play that game either so far this year. When I used to cover Kirk Cousins, what people would say to me when I would come on their podcast as their guest to preview the game, they'd be like, how do you feel about Kirk? And my answer was like, he's been in the league like 9 years. Like, I don't know. How do you feel about Kirk? And now I feel like I'm being that guy about Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
I think that Justin Herbert, being as talented as he is, like raw talent, makes people think, oh, the rest of the team can just fall apart and you're fine because he should just do everything, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's completely fair to Justin Herbert, but how have you felt in general about his overall performance so far this year?
Yeah, it's really tough to evaluate, like, because after the first 3 games, he was, tied for 2nd in MVP odds at that
Mhm.
time. And, I think Greg Roman gets a lot of flack, and right now it's there's not a lot of good vibes around Greg Roman, but they came into the season and they were doing 4 receiver sets like he's never done before, and Justin Herbert was, doing design runs like we've never seen before, and the offense was humming, and the first 3 games looked fantastic. And then you lose all your offensive tackles, and it's kind of like, well, what can you do here? I think with Herbert, like, you see so many insane throws on a weekly basis that's the only reason why the Chargers are still afloat right now. And when you're getting hit as often as he is getting hit, I think that stat from Daniel Popper was 62 times, I believe. He's only been sacked 20 times despite getting hit 62 times.
That's
And
crazy.
I yeah, like, of all the quarterbacks who could get hit that often, you're probably talking about like 45 sacks at this point in time. So his ability to escape pressure and not turn the ball over and mitigate everything that's going on in front of him is still next level. The arm talent is still insane. He had a throw to Keenan Allen on Sunday where his progression is 1 to 2 to the left. Pressure comes like instantly, so he rolls out and is getting, DeForest Buckner is already around his ankles, and he throws a cover 2 hole shot to Keenan Allen like 30 yards down the field, and it's just like toe tap, beautiful grab, and Keenan Allen gets up and he's like, where did that come from? Like, I was not supposed to get the football today. Um, so he's still insanely talented. It's just the circumstances right now are so bad, and the Chargers cannot stop the run at all right now. The run defense is so bad. Like, I feel like I'm watching Brandon Staley coach defense again right now. So the circumstances are horrible around him. They have great pass catchers, like you mentioned. That part has stayed healthy and true, but he just is asked to do so much heavy lifting to keep this team afloat that it's really hard to evaluate, where he's at in terms of the hierarchy. But I think generally speaking, you're talking about a top 6 or 7 quarterback, depending on how you feel about playoff success and all that.
I think we also came from a world even recently where the quarterbacks, if you're good, then you would just win all the games. And look, Mahomes was in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl last year. So you have kind of these 2 or 3 guys that have just been good almost no matter what. Last year, Josh Allen wins MVP with I'm not even sure who his number one wide receiver was. Khalil Shakir, I guess. Maybe a tight end. I mean, if you can win MVP playing like that, then you're going to say, well, why doesn't everyone just do it that way? Buffalo does have a great offensive line, by the way, which I think helped Josh Allen be as good as he is. And Lamar Jackson is kind of run around and scramble and do all those things. But I even feel like where we've gone in the last maybe year or two, it's harder to do that, especially this year in the environment where defenses have taken over and we're seeing a lot of defensive battle type of games. And even Mahomes, before he got his receivers back, wasn't really playing at the highest elite 50 touchdown level of Mahomes. We've seen Allen struggle against the Atlanta Falcons. We've seen Lamar
Yeah.
not have perfect games. It just hasn't been that kind of year in the NFL where there's been just, hey, if you're a great quarterback, you're just going to steamroll everyone. So I think that what's happening to Herbert is kind of something that's going on all around the league as defenses have gotten stronger and stronger. You mentioned the defensive side of the ball in the run game. Now, the Vikings have this trouble where they don't like to stick with the run. It's also hard to stick with the run when you're playing from behind, which they have been. And, everybody
Yeah.
screams at the top of the top of the mountains, run the ball, KOC, but you're down 14-3 because you threw a pick six. And when were they supposed to do that? So
Yeah.
it's a tough thing to evaluate. I'm sure you deal with this as well. Why is the Chargers defense so bad though? Because this is a thing. If you let the Vikings run against you and they can play action off of that, KOC's play action game is really terrific. We've seen it over the years with Kirk. We've seen it with Sam Darnold, who I think led the league in quarterback rating on play action last year, or was maybe second or third with Goff, with Herbert. Why can't the Chargers stop the run? And is this something that you guys are talking about with the Vikings and Jordan Mason?
And like you said, the numbers that the Vikings have running the football, I think, are not indicative of like, oh, like the Colts were very obviously a bad matchup for the Chargers.
Sure.
This one's not so obvious when you look at the numbers because of how infrequently they are running the football. The talent is definitely there, and if Aaron Jones gets back, then that obviously adds to the equation here. The struggles on defense, I think, are part health related. Obviously, Khalil Mack got injured in week 2 against the Raiders, and that has changed a lot. They lost to Sean Hand, who was their starting like 3 technique, kind of defensive tackle, and his replacement is not really. He's almost exclusively like a DPR, designated pass rusher type. So when he gets on the field, Justin Eboigbe is his name, and teams can run the football when he's on the field, like the Colts did. It doesn't look great. To me, the most concerning thing has been the play of Deion Henley and Derwin James, who the Chargers defense is not. It's not loaded with stars. They kind of built the roster with, hey, we have a linebacker who we think is special. We have a safety who is special. We have 2 edge rushers who we really trust in Tuli Tuipulotu and Khalil Mack. And then we're just going to get as many depth pieces as we can. Their safety room is really deep. Their corner room is really deep. They had a deep defensive tackle room. Now they've got another injury there. And when you build the roster this way, you need your stars to play like stars. And Deion Henley had a great first 2 weeks, looked like he was taking that leap. And then he was dealing with this illness where he played against the Broncos with 101-degree fever. And like, credit to him for playing through it. He said after the game he lost like 15 pounds.
Oh.
And ever since he's gotten sick, he doesn't look like himself. And I guess it's kind of understandable, but the instincts are not there. The speed is not there. He's missing a lot more tackles right now. I think he's got 8 missed tackles on the season. All of last year he had 10. So he's not really doing the usual Deion Henley stuff. Last year against the Raiders, like, he absolutely blanketed Brock Bowers in one-on-one coverage like 4 or 5 times. This past week, Tyler Warren he cooked him like 3 or 4 different times in that game. So he's not playing well. And Derwin James is also not playing well. He also is missing a lot of tackles. He's getting washed out of a few plays. He's taking himself out of plays. So when you are dealing with these 2 star players who are in kind of a funk individually, and you don't really have other players who can really elevate and take pressure off of them, this is what has become of the Chargers defense the last few weeks. So, a lot of Chargers fans this defense is terrible and they want Jesse Minter fired, and which is crazy to me because I think he's awesome. They just need their stars to play like stars. And that really is the main thing with this defense. And, Khalil Mack returned from injury last week. He only played 12 snaps. He says that he's going to be at full capacity this week. We'll see. The Chargers usually like to kind of ramp their players up a little bit. But if Khalil can come back, be Khalil, if Derwin and Deion can get back to who they've been, then the defense will look a lot better. And they just obviously traded for Odafe-Owe, but they need their stars to play like stars. And right now their stars are playing like rotational players.
Well, and from a Vikings side, when you have an edge here and the offensive line has gotten back to closest to 100% that it's been all season, this is where the Vikings, if they can't take advantage, then maybe they just can't run the ball ever in the rest of our lifetimes, as long as KOC is the coach. This should be a big factor for them, especially if Aaron Jones is active and even participates in this game a little. Like, they just opened his window, but could he just rotate in a little bit with Jordan Mason? But the Vikings have sort of not had the offensive line together to be able to dominate someone on the line. And for 2 weeks in a row, they're going to have the same 5 starters, which is a miracle compared to how it's gone. So I think that's a major factor here. The last thing, obviously, for matchups here, unless you want to get into the kickers, which, hey, Vikings are kicking the heck out of the ball. 2 franchises that have had tragic misses from kickers. But save for that, the coverage unit for the Chargers, are they struggling to sleep that Carson Wentz is starting this game? Or no, I'm kidding. But It's been a wild ride with Carson Wentz. It's
Yeah.
been wide open receivers, great catches, some competent performance, and then some like what
Carson Wentz.
happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So he has truly just been Carson Wentz. But how does the secondary stack up considering the Vikings number 1 and 2 wide receivers?
I mean, obviously, we're concerned about Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. The Chargers don't have a star corner, but they have four corners that they really trust. I think Tarheeb still is their best corner. He's got tremendous instincts in zone coverage. He hasn't gotten a ton of targets thrown his way this year, but he's got the ability to flip a game on its head from an interception standpoint. He's just really really smart, great ball skills, and when he has been tested, he has performed well. I don't think he's like a Patrick Surtain. Obviously, nobody's Patrick Surtain, right? But he's probably more on like the low end of a CB1 kind of player, but he's just really, really solid. Not the best athlete, so you can take advantage of him vertically at times. And then they rotate Dante Jackson, Cam Hart, and Benjamin St. Juice, which like he was not good in Washington, but he's actually looked really good in LA. He's got a few pass breakups. He had an interception last week against the Dolphins that was really, really nice. So they kind of view the other three outside of Tarheeb still as kind of like a matchup based, system where if they're facing a speedy receiver room, they'll go with Jackson and St. Juice because they're the faster guys. If they're going up against a big receiver group, they'll put St. Juice and Cam Hart out there because they're both 6'3" and like to get up and press and things like that. So they really are very flexible in the cornerback rotation. I'm very curious how they actually go about matching up with a healthy Vikings receiver cast because they don't usually like double team a lot. They play a lot of matched coverage zone, and they haven't really faced anybody like Jefferson just quite yet. So does the gravity of him change things a little bit? Obviously, I would hope they don't just trust somebody one on one against him. And I think Jesse Minter will have a plan to make sure that Jefferson does not beat them, as opposed to maybe they'll trust their coverage against Addison and Hawkinson and those guys.
Jefferson mentioned today to us that he doesn't expect a lot of man coverage in this game, that he expects that they've played mostly zone and that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen. But against Justin Jefferson, sometimes defenses come with an entirely different plan. I don't know if you could do that with 2 walkthrough practices getting ready for
Yeah.
this. So it
Right.
feels like a Justin Jefferson game. Also, the Vikings, I think, in recent weeks have done a very good job of just getting Jefferson the ball quickly and then throwing deeper to Addison, who's getting more one-on-one coverage. And as you mentioned, that pull of Justin Jefferson. But I also think that this is a game where TJ Hawkinson has been criticized a lot here for not having the same type of production that he had before his ACL injury. And after seeing what Tyler Warren did against the Chargers defense, just looking at last week is a tough game to just say,
Yeah.
do that same thing as the Colts, because the Colts run the ball like maniacs. But it seems to me like it's the underneath stuff that can be killer for the Chargers, not necessarily, hey, you just go beat their corners one-on-one and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think with the biggest issue with like how the linebackers and safeties are playing is that they are falling for a lot of the eye candy that teams are throwing at them, and it came to a head with Tyler Warren, who's an awesome football player. But even against the Commanders, it was a problem with Zach Ertz a couple of times. It was a problem with Luke McCaffrey a couple of times. It was a problem for Darren Waller a couple of times where, the Dolphins do this thing, obviously, where they'll like jet sweep, like fake jet sweep, bubble screen, and then they'll throw it like to the opposite corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Darren Waller got open a couple of times. And so just like the misdirection that some of these creative offensive coordinators are throwing at the Chargers, the linebackers and the safeties are having a really tough time with it. And I know the Vikings don't motion at the snap a lot, but they do a lot of like pre-snap motion. And so just the kind of misdirection that other teams have thrown at them has been more, we're going to motion at the snap, and we're going to fake a bubble screen this way, or we're going to fake like a dagger concept this way, and then we're going to come back the other way and give our best athlete a run after catch opportunity. And it's almost always been working. So they're falling for a lot of eye candy right now. Again, was not a problem for the previous regime last year. Like they were so sound. But that attention to detail of we just have to be on it with motion has been a bigger problem this year than it has been previously for this regime.
The theme of this game is the Vikings and our coverage and fans are, it's not going that great. And Chargers with you guys and your coverages, it's not going that great. So it's the not going that great bowl. Somebody needs a win here to build on the momentum. And then the Vikings trying to get through until JJ McCarthy can get back. On FanDuel, the Chargers are 3-point favorites and the over under is 44.5, which seems like a pretty darn good over under and not a bad prediction. I have not made the official Purple Insider prediction, which everyone just waits and when will he give it to us? I think that the Vikings should win this game, but they're not favored. So how are you feeling about 3-point favorites for the Chargers, 44.5 over under?
I'm stunned that the Chargers are favorites, honestly, given the way that the past few games have gone. I mean, they got blown out at home by the Commanders, and then they got blown out at home by the Colts. And obviously, the Colts are probably the best team in the AFC, I guess. You would maybe argue for the Chiefs or the Bills, but the Commanders, dealing with their own injuries and stuff like that. But the last two home games for the Chargers have not looked good, and I'm kind of stunned that that's as not. It's not a huge number, but I do not believe the Chargers should be favorites, is what I'm saying. If Joe Alt does not play this game, I think it will be ugly, and I think the Vikings could also potentially blow out the Chargers because I do not trust Greg Roman to have a great plan for the Brian Flores blitzes because that's who that has always been Greg Roman's biggest struggles are whenever he plays Brian Flores. This game has terrified me from whenever the schedule came out. And that was when the Chargers had Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. So if Joe Alt plays, I feel a little bit better about it. I think the Chargers could keep it interesting. But until I see the offensive line protect Herbert at a higher level and until I see the run defense actually show up, I'm not really picking the Chargers. And I know that, a lot of Chargers fans criticize our show because we don't always pick the Chargers on our show. Our job is to analyze the team. I don't know what you offer me. So until those two big glaring weaknesses stop being such a big glaring weaknesses, I'm kind of inclined to pick the other teams. And I think specifically with Flores and with Aaron Jones potentially coming back, it's going to be another long night for Justin Herbert and company.
Well, I'll tell you, when the schedule came out, I looked at this and said, like, there's no way they win this game. Well, because, you're playing the Eagles at home and then you got to fly out there in the short week and everything. Like, this could be really hard. It's just a very different Chargers team than I expected because my thought was, with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt and they add Becton, like the beef is going to win this football game. And now the beef just really isn't there or is banged up. So, we will see. Both of us not flying high on either one of these clubs. They need a win pretty bad. Steven Haglund, the Guilty as Charged podcast. I'm really glad we could get together, man. I admire your work. I've followed you for a long time. I was on your show at one point, so I appreciate you taking the time to pop on and do a hardcore preview here of Vikings and Chargers. Great job breaking it down. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. The Chargers and Vikings are always very similar. I feel like we're always like picking right next to each other in the draft. So always a fun game, always a fun team to talk about. And appreciate you having me on tonight for sure.
And we know a kicker will be involved in this game. We just don't know how. So, all right, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Have a